Dodge this.
You must unite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the crying in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being, God damn it! My life has value!
This is all I know.
I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly.
Oh, is that what it is? Well, I don't want you to violate the law. Get in your back number, he'll leave you alone. Yeah.
Good works are done in light, so what's done in darkness needs to be brought to light. And it's up to us, citizen media, to be out here and expose it.
We will stand and fight. Seeking answers to age-old questions. Deciphering the world painted around you by the mainstream media. This is the Kev Baker Show. And now, here is your host, Kev Baker.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. A big, huge, massive, warm welcome to what is going to be a very special broadcast of the Kev Baker Show in association with Popeye and Down the Rabbit Hole. Want to welcome each and every one of you to the show tonight. 42 in the chat room already, and thousands more listening out there on the streams. Now tonight I'm obviously joined by Popeye. We'll get to him in just a moment. But I have got my two usual KBS regulars back on for this roundtable discussion. I'll go to you first, Marty. This is promising to be one hell of a show tonight. And in theme with our Tuesday nights, we're going to be shining the light on the darkest topics of all. The global paedophile ring.
Yeah, I think it's about time we shed some light on what's really going on. No surprise to a lot of the listeners, but for the new ones, beware, because it's unnervy stuff.
It certainly is. It's a dark topic, but you know, silence is consent. And it's only because of people's silence that these asshats and these rapists and these murderers have been able to get away with this over the ages. So before we get to Popeye, let's welcome to the show Mr. Luke Edwards. Back again, man. This is becoming a habit, Luke.
I know, yeah. How you doing, guys? Yeah, good,
absolutely.
Good to be asked on again, mate. And well, I just couldn't refuse, to be honest. It is a passionate subject of mine, and I'm just sick of hearing it, mate. We've got to just crack on with this and just keep putting the pressure on.
And we've got a few updates on the Hampstead satanic case that we've been covering. We're going to be going into the celebrity paedophile rings, the royal paedophile rings. Popeye's going to be updating us on what's going on over on the other side of the pond. But before we get there, I'm going to hand over to Marty, and he's going to give each and every one of you out in the chat room that well-deserved shout-out that you all love so much. So, Marty, take it away.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say a big thank you to everybody tuned in. No matter where you are, if you're on the TuneIn or any of the streams across the internet or the FM affiliates, thanks very much. 46 over in the chat room over at truefrequencyradio.com. Come and join us and get involved in the discussion. Big shout out to Daryl, Dr. Harry Weiner, Kev, Paisley Buddy, Andreens, Silver Fox Dude, Hell Yeah, Gurgs, Time Lord, Tim Bird, Den Oldham, Russell Brand, Mac, Harold, Stushi, Wotan, Yawning Hippo, Cave Lady, Alpha Dog, Choice Bro, Hell Ward, Berlin Cockney, Ozzy and Zach, PRC News, Angel Whispers, Amanda, Glenn, Alan Ayrshire, Equilibrium, North of South, Freedom Project, Miss Susie Q, Cloud, Expo Max, Transpersonals, Wardy, Big Psy from NI, Bag of Chips, Angry Scouse, Dr. Blues, Zach, Han Solo, Angry Beaver, Matrix Girl, Fag Paper, Robbie, how's it going, man? Rune, Woodwolf, and the one and only Joe Joseph. Thanks for tuning in.
Wow, Marty, 50 in the chat. Now then, as I was saying, this is going to be a 3-hour broadcast tonight. So let's welcome onto the show our good friend, co-host, and the host of Down the Rabbit Hole, Mr. Popeye. How are you doing, friend?
Good evening, gentlemen.
How are you?
Very well.
and thank you for having me on to discuss this dark, evil topic, Kev. But like your intro says, I like that one line where you hear the guy, he says, only evil is done in the darkness and it needs to be brought to the light. Well, this is some evil stuff, and it needs to be talked about, even if it makes people uncomfortable or angry. First of all, it should make you uncomfortable and angry. This shouldn't be something that you easily swallow and go, "Oh, okay, it's no big deal." It should make you so uncomfortable and angry that you can't sit down, that you have to get up out of your chair and you have to pace around while listening to us on your speakers. That's the feeling it should give you.
And Popeye, that is why myself and Marty and Luke and others are so determined to keep the pressure on, because there is so many distractions that are thrown our way to put us off some of the biggest stories that are doing the rounds. It wasn't so long ago that the global media, every front page was covering the fact that Prince Andrew had been partaking in some underage sex with a sex slave. You hardly hear that mentioned outside of the alternative media circles now.
Pay that no mind, because there was another mass shooting by terrorists. So terror, fear, terror. Look over here, Kev. Don't look over here.
Yeah, if all else fails, just roll out the Anunnaki ISIS and they will distract the public for hours and days on end. But one case that we have been covering really in-depth, Popeye, has been the Hampstead satanic ritual abuse. Now, I don't know how much of that you've looked into. I do believe you've seen a couple of the children's videos. What's your raw take on that without having done any deep research on this?
When I first saw the videos, I kind of was like, all right, did somebody do this as like a hoax thing? Is this being done to kind of discredit the conversation when it comes to satanic ritual abuse? The idea of satanic ritual abuse has been debated. I'll say, well, debated, right? Not really debated, but it's been discussed going back to the 90s. And the FBI, there was such, like Ted Gunderson and people of his of that generation, researchers, made such a stink about it back in the days that they actually did release a report on it, but they said it doesn't exist. They said it does not exist. People that say that they were involved in satanic ritual abuse have false memories, and they're suffering from false memory syndrome.
Oh, how convenient!
Right, exactly. Because there's always a scientific excuse to cover their tracks. It's disgusting, and it's not. My laughter is like frustrated laughter, because I'd really like to see these people swinging from the end of a rope, to be honest with you. If you hurt children and do the evil things that they do to children, you should be swinging from the end of a rope, period, end of story. And for people that think that this is just a one-off thing in the UK, here in the US we have the same problem. Here in Florida, there's a school where you can just go on Google and type in Florida school rape rooms. And you'll see that there's this school that people would send their kids to, like bad kids or whatever, and they would get sent to, and people were, the kids had made allegations in the past and nobody believed anything. And then, you were conspiracy theorists when you talked about it, until somehow it ended up, and I forget exactly how it ended up getting out, but the authorities went out there with ground penetrating radar, and oops, we found a whole bunch of graves. And then now it just came out a couple weeks ago. They were like, yeah, they unearthed a room that they found. That was a rape room. The mainstream media called it a rape room. Why is there a rape room in a school, Kev?
Popeye, this reminds me of a case in one of the Channel Islands, Jersey, I believe, and this was a school down there, and they found a torture dungeon underneath it. Now, it turns out Savile and Ted Heath, a former Prime Minister between the years of 70 and 74, they had been going there for weekend pleasure, and I don't use that word lightly. You see, Ted Heath had a boat called the Morning Cloud, and what himself and Savile would do is they would go down to this school and they would procure young boys for Ted Heath, who was rampantly gay. Now, just because you're gay doesn't make you a paedophile, but in his case, he was. Now, what would happen there is, well, why don't we just listen in to what would actually happen? Because I've got a clip here queued up, and this should set us up nicely what lies ahead. And just remember, folks, what we're listening to here is an actual barrister, Michael Shrimpton, and he's testifying about what one of our former Prime Ministers and Jimmy Savile used to get up to.
But the most prominent paedophile associated with the Savile ring was a man called Edward Heath, who you may recall was Prime Minister and took us into the EEC. Heath was into little boys, and Savile was supplying them. A number of these boys were taken out of the Haute de Garenne home in Jersey. Savile was taking children from a children's home with the support of German assets in Jersey. What was happening was that children's homes in the Channel Islands, particularly Haute de Garenne in Jersey, children were being taken from these homes, boys in the case of Edward Heath, as he was gay, and a paedophile, were being taken onto his yacht, the Morning Cloud. Savile was actually going out he went down to Jersey, and he was actually taking boys. There was another man involved as well, but Savile himself took boys from the children's home, where he was a guest, or welcome, onto the boat. So he was taking boys out onto Morning Cloud. Now, since Heath was well known, and since the boys were talking young men, the boys were murdered and thrown off the boat. That's why the BBC and the Cabinet Office have been so keen to protect Savile. That's why the Cabinet Office in the 1980s were willing to back Savile to the point of giving him a position of authority at Broadmoor, which is an absolute, you don't put a paedophile in charge of Broadmoor. The Cabinet Secretary at the time, who thankfully is no longer with us, Hunt, was also a paedophile, was in on this, met Savile. He was Catholic, met Savile, as did that very nice man, the late Archbishop of Westminster, Cardinal Basil Hume. Basil was not a paedophile, but knew Hunt and had a shrewd idea. He wasn't stupid. He had a shrewd idea of what had been going on, and I've no doubt was told to keep a lid on it. Hunt was in on it, so the Cabinet Secretary at the time was in on it, was aware of what was going on, was aware he had a Prime Minister who was involved not just in abusing young boys, but was murdering them as well. It's quite possible that there was a crewman on the yacht who did the actual murder. I'm not saying Edward Heath necessarily bashed the boys on the boko and tossed them overboard. He may have had somebody do that for him, but he was certainly guilty of murder under English law as an accessory or on the joint enterprise basis. Oh, if someone is inclined in that direction and you can supply them with boys, then you've got a hold on them, or girls. There's nothing worse for a politician than being exposed in the murder and sexual abuse of young people. And if you've got a politician who is abusing and killing young girls and boys, but boys or girls, then you've got a hold on them. Pedophilia is a wonderful means, if you're a hostile intelligence agency, of blackmailing politicians. The reason it's particularly disgusting, quite aside from the element of sexual abuse and coercion and corruption of young people, that's disgusting in and of itself. But what makes it particularly vile, and we saw this in the Madeleine McCann case, and that's why the Madeleine McCann case was so heartbreaking and tragic. If the children are, and I'm afraid with paedophilia we sometimes have babies being abused, but if you're not talking babies, if you're talking toddlers who are able to recognize the people who are abusing them, since the people, there's absolutely no point doing it unless the politician is high profile. Since you're talking about people who are on television, people who are high profile, you have to murder the children in order to protect your asset. So for the Germans, it was essential that the boys that were being taken onto the yacht, that was a death ride. When Jimmy Savile was taking, let's say, a 14-year-old boy down to Morning Cloud, handing him over to Edward Heath or a member of the crew on the yacht, it was a death ride. That was that boy's last journey on Earth.
Can you think of the absolute evil? These children, as vulnerable as they were, removed from their families, orphaned, some of them with learning difficulties, actually feeling special for the day, being offered this trip out with these so-called famous people. And as you heard there, because of their fame, it was a one-way trip for these young boys, and so many of them didn't come back. And what got us into that was Popeye asking about torture chambers and stuff like this, rape rooms. Well, underneath there was children's teeth found, Popeye. Now, there was a policeman, for once a decent, honest cop called Lenny Parker, and he was digging into this case. Now, there was one point they thought they'd discovered the bones of up to 6 young children. Now, what happened then was he was shut down. One of the Home Office's special forensic teams and the top Met detectives were sent out to the island. They took over the case, and within weeks we were being told in the media that there was nothing to see here. These were the bones of dogs. That is how they cover this crap up. And this stuff is going on to this day.
Absolutely shocking. I don't think any words can really describe it, guys. If people are not peed off by this, then there's something wrong.
And you know, the reason I'm glad we played that there, it kind of sets up the mentality of these people who are involved in what is no less than satanic ritual abuse. And look, today we were sent a video which was relating to the Hampstead case. Now, this was the grandparents of the children involved. Now, unfortunately, due to work and getting ready for the show, I haven't had a chance to view that, but I believe you did. Do you want to tell us what was happening in that?
Yeah, I'll put it on because they're speaking in Russian. There's a translator thing that's on YouTube, so I'll put it on that. And it did take some watching and obviously, trying to sort of keep up with it. But they came over in December. They've had, I think, 3 meetings with the kids. This is the first time, like, the kids were, happy to see them and overjoyed and that, and probably happy to see a friendly face again. The next 2 times, they said they were very withdrawn and scared, and obviously there was a big difference between the first time and the second 2 times that they met up. The parents are obviously distressed. They just want the best for their offspring, and they want to just take them home to Russia, where they say they've got a great environment for them to live in. So it was hard to watch. It was I feel for the grandparents, but from what I made of it, they were obviously staying in the UK. They were with their daughter, the children's mother, and at one point the house basically got surrounded by police. They were heavily knocking on the door. They were saying, let us in, let us in. But they resisted that, and they were asking them out the window what's going on. More and more police kept sort of bowling on up, and then if they'd had a warrant, they would have just gone in, wouldn't they? They wouldn't have hung around. It just seems peculiar that are these police doing it off their own back? Is it something that was sanctioned by the courts? It didn't sound like your normal police raid, because they would have just been through the door in seconds. So the mother was at the location. They said that she obviously panicked for her safety, and so she managed to escape out the back door, and they were obviously hounding them for that, and since then they've been given no more access to the children. The grandparents aren't criminals, so why should they be given any sort of grief over it? Why should they be restricted from seeing the grandchildren when they're not accused of doing anything wrong? Surely for the state looking after the children, if that's what they are doing, if not just controlling the narrative, they should want the grandparents to have access to the children, to give them as much I'm trying to find a word for it, but security and natural existence as that they can for the children.
And Martin, I believe you've watched this video as well. Your thoughts on the grandparents and their testimony?
Yeah, well, I really did feel for the grandparents who were just trying to get access to the children. The funny thing is, on the second occasion when they went to visit them, when they noticed the whole demeanour had changed, they were made to sign a form. And the form was basically saying that you can't ask certain questions about, how they are, is anybody bullying them, what's going on. They weren't allowed to ask them anything, and they basically had like a guardian overwatching the whole thing. Apparently the kids kept looking at the guardian putting their head to the floor, not knowing what to say. And it was quite clear to the grandparents that some coaching had gone on. And I feel so annoyed about this whole thing, really, because you've got a lot of trolls and a lot of people on YouTube saying that the whole thing is a psyop, even down to the grandparents on the video there. And I just think it's got absolutely ridiculous because, like I said from the beginning, whether any of the claims are true about what's been going on in the schools and stuff, those children have clearly been subjected to some sort of abuse. And now with it being in the public eye, I think we deserve to know the truth. I mean, just look at what's going on with the scandals in the government right now. It's not too hard. It's not beyond the realms of possibility to think that this could happen, especially when we've seen so many cases of it over the decades across the world. It's just unfortunate then when we do see something, there is a lot of disinfo out there and people trying to, muddy the waters and stuff, even down to the very point of saying that it's a psyop to come after the truth movement, to basically censor how we cover these sort of cases and stuff like that. And I just think by running with that sort of stuff, you're just discrediting the whole truth on these sex scandals and the abuse of children, which we can confirm to be real, like the Savills and so on and so on.
I think it's easier for people to actually just say it's all a psyop and fake, and it's just easier. It's easier for them to go about their daily business, to not have to engage with it, not have to analyze and go through what we're going through, to actually get to the bottom of this, because none of us want to be going over this and mulling over it day on day, finding out ever worse things about what's going on in the world. None of us want to be doing this. We've all got things we'd rather be doing, and it's just easier for people. It's easier for their little lives, for them to just go about doing their sort of mundane stuff and just not challenge this kind of sickening story.
Well, on you go, Marty. Oh, Popeye, sorry.
I just think there's an overuse of certain terminology. Like, people are like, oh, it's a psyop or a false flag or a whatever, insert whatever meme that they want to use, whatever label, and a lot of times they're misusing these terms. And it's because they're just like awake. They're at that like beginning stage of awakening, and where they see everything is, now a psychological operation or a false flag event, and they just happen to have a lot of viewers or people paying attention to their blog or YouTube channel at the moment, and then they're the ones that get all the attention, and it's always, screaming and the sky is falling and everything. I think people. Like myself, I was kind of skeptical when I first saw the videos about this, right?
Yeah.
And then I talked to Kev about it off air. And I said to him, hey, man, you've interviewed some of these people. What's the deal? Is this thing real or not? And he said, Popeye, I swear to God, this stuff is not BS. And I said, because, the kids kind of seemed like they were, to me at first, they thought they were being coached. But either way, I mean, they had intricate knowledge of certain things that little kids their age should not have knowledge of unless somebody either sat and talked to them about it. And I mean, not once or twice, but they would have had to sit with them for a while and shown them pornography, or these kids actually witnessed it and experienced it. It's one of the two.
You can't, they mentioned the human leather. One of the people that follows the show posted something on the weekend, and I looked at the link, and there was a link to I'm laughing because I find it ridiculous, but it's real. There was a link to a website, and it's a uk.co.uk website, advertising bespoke human leather belts, shoes, anything you like, anything that you want out of human leather. Basically all grades of it, whatever you want, they will make for you. And it was a UK. It didn't have a telephone number, didn't have an address, didn't have, on the contact things, it was simply an email address. But, that's some weird stuff. And how on earth, I'm in my 40s and I'd never even contemplated human leather or thought of the concept of human leather in my life. How would kids of 7 or 8 years old understand the concept of shoes and stuff being made of human leather?
And it's $27,000 for a human leather wallet, Popeye. This isn't for your common paedophile in the street. This is the upper echelons, the people that we are talking about tonight. The judges, the politicians, the elites.
Can we just be clear that wearing human skin is all around creepy? I don't care if you're a homeless dude or you're the richest man in the world and you own everything in every country and you run everything behind the scenes. I don't care what level you're at. Skinning another human and wearing it or sewing it together to make a dress out of it. Yeah. Remember a guy named Ed Gein? Anyone know anything about serial killers? A guy named Ed Gein.
Is that Buffalo Bill?
Well, that's actually who that and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was based off of. More so the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was based off of the actual true story of Ed Gein, who killed women and then sewed their skin like as dresses and stuff. Yeah, so I mean there are people that do that, but we usually call them serial killers, Kev.
Oh, not good. And Marty, I see you're wanting to chip in there just before we go to the break.
Yeah, I just wanted to really go back to the Hampstead case to address the elephant in the room. And basically, people are talking about the guy, the mum's boyfriend at the time when they were on holiday, who was, you can hear in the background when they're filming the videos. People are saying that he is actually a registered child abuser. He's apparently, allegedly attacked his kids in the past, been done for it. But I'd like to say, please, if anybody has that information or some kind of proof of that, then bring it to the table, because that is what this is all about. And if this is the case, then surely he should be exposed and, you know, sent to prison for the abuse of these children and coaching them, if this is the case. But I'm keeping an open mind to it because there is plenty of other real cases going on.
And we've said that from day one here on KBS. We are just concerned about the children. If what they claim has taken place really did occur, this is so wrong on so many levels. And like Marty said there, if they've been coerced into this, that too is equally as wrong. And we will be determined.
Welcome back to the Kev Baker Show here on the True Frequency Radio Network. Yeah, butchering that one. Tonight we are joined by Popeye from Down the Rabbit Hole for a bit of a special show. 3 hours tonight, guys. Also, we're joined by Kev and Luke. And before the break, we were talking about the whole issue of the satanic paedophile rings and all this crazy stuff that we see going on in the world. I just wanted to throw this one to Kev. Harriet Harman. I believe that is a big idol.
Harriet Harman. How many times do I have to visit the topic that I think demonstrates the mentality of the people who rule over us right now? And you know, I've said it ad nauseum. So today I went away and I found a little clip. And I think this says it as well as I ever could. And we'll come back and we'll discuss this. And then Marty's got a clip from over the other side of the pond from a talk show which shows one of the victims testifying to her experiences over there. But first, my favourite little Nazi, paedophile sympathiser and lover of incest and sympathiser for those who are into child porn, Harriet Harman.
Over recent days, the Daily Mail has splashed its front pages about the Labour deputy leader, her husband, Shadow Minister Jack Dromey, and the former Labour Health Secretary, Patricia Hewitt. All three worked for the National Council for Civil Liberties in the 1970s and 80s. The council, now known as the human rights organisation Liberty, was linked to the Pedophile Information Exchange, a group which campaigned for paedophiles' rights. It even argued to lower the age of consent to 10. Ms Harman became the legal officer at the NCCL in 1978, and her name appears on documents submitted to the Home Office that argued that pictures of naked children should not be banned as indecent unless it could be proved that the child had been harmed. Harriet Harman, you were the legal officer for several years at the National Council for Civil Liberties, which was affiliated to the Pedophile Information Exchange. Why was it acceptable even to have an affiliation? They didn't try to hide what they were. The title of the group was the Pedophile Information Exchange. Why was it okay for them even to have any link with the group you worked for? At the time when you were the legal officer there, you wrote in a briefing paper to MPs, and we have it here, that prosecutions in relation to child protection and photography should only proceed if you can prove that children were actually harmed. Can you see why people might raise an eyebrow? Was the affiliation between the two groups a mistake?
Well, NCCL takes money from any organisation which was a lawful organisation and any individual.
You're happy that your employer for 4 years took membership money from a group that was overtly campaigning for the rights of paedophiles. That wasn't a mistake. That's what you're saying.
You know, I stand by what I was doing at NCCL, and I stand by what I've done all the way through.
Well, I'll tell you what she stood by. She stood by a group that was trying to lower the age of consent to 10. Now, she was also trying to water down the incest laws. And as long as there was no physical bruising on the child, pornography, child pornography, that too would be okay under Harriet Harman's very, very disgustingly liberal views. And Popeye, she sat in our government, man.
It's nice. Very nice.
Absolutely outrageous. Now, like I was saying before that, I was going to go to Marty to demonstrate that this isn't just over in the UK, and it's not any one religion, but some religions do go for this more than others. Marty, what's your clip you've got there?
Yeah, this is a clip from the Oprah Winfrey Show in 1989. This is a Jewish lady who came on claiming to be part of a family who practiced the dark side of, just take a listen.
My next guest was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations. She is currently in extensive therapy, suffers from multiple personality disorder, meaning she's blocked out many of the terrifying and painful memories of her childhood. Meet Rachel, who is also in disguise to protect her identity. You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to like 1700.
And so you were...
Right. I was born into a family that believes in this.
And does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl.
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right. There's other Jewish families across the country. It's not just my own family.
Really? And so who knows about it? Lots of people now.
I talked to a police detective in the Chicago area, and several of my friends know, and I've spoke publicly before.
And so when you were brought up in this kind of evilness, did you just think it was normal?
I've blocked out a lot of the memories I had because of my multiple personality disorder. But yes, I mean, it's like if you grow up with something, you think it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought something...
So what kinds of things? You don't have to give us the gory details, but what kinds of things went on in the family?
Well, there would be rituals in which babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to,
Who's babies?
There were people who bred babies in their family. No one would know about it. A lot of people were overweight, so you couldn't tell if they were pregnant or not. Or they would supposedly go away for a while and then come back. The other thing I want to point out, not all Jewish people sacrifice babies. I mean, no. It's not a very difficult thing.
This is the first time I heard of any Jewish people sacrificing babies. But anyway, so you witnessed the sacrifice.
Right. When I was very young, I was forced to participate in that, in which I had to sacrifice an infant.
And the purpose of sacrifice is to what? Is to bring you what? What are you sacrificing for?
For power.
Uh-huh. Power. And so, were you ever used? Were you ever used yourself?
I was molested. I was raped several times.
Mm-hmm. And what's your mother doing?
She's
in all of this. What's her role in all of this?
I'm not exactly what her role is. I haven't, recovered all of my memories, but her family was extremely involved.
Mm-hmm.
She brought me to it. Both of my parents brought me to it.
And where is she now?
She's lives in the Chicago metropolitan area. She's on the Human Relations Commission of the town that she lives in, and she's an upstanding citizen. Nobody would suspect her.
Were you raised with a sense of right and wrong, Rachel?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I had both. I mean, to the outside world, everything we did was proper and right, and then there were the nights that things changed, that things just got turned around. What was wrong was right, and what was right was wrong. That's what helped to create to develop MPD.
Mm-hmm. Multiple personality.
Right.
Now, in your family, did you all call it worshiping the devil?
No, I don't know.
It was just evil, these things you did.
Right. Well, I said it was evil, and they said it was good. There's a book that I had just come across called Lilith's Cave, which is a book of Jewish mysticism and supernatural. And there's a lot in that book that relates to what I, endured when I was a child.
There you have it, folks. So there is a real dark side to all this sort of stuff. I mean, don't tell me everybody's making it up. It's just there's too many cases of it over the decades, too many statements and claims to just all be nonsense. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, the whole recently we had the Catholic sex abuse scandals that made quite public sort of notoriety in that. But there's another one that I seen a video of a few years back, and this kind of goes back to what Popeye was saying before, that it's almost instinct to kind of deny this early on in the days when you're awake, because obviously I've been awake for a long time, but even after I'd heard David Icke saying about this sort of thing going on, there was a video I seen of a woman that said she was brought up in a satanic sex abuse situation from living or a father or whatever worked at the Vatican, and in the dungeons of the Vatican they had these mad ritual sex abuse things going on. And even I at the time thought I wanted it to be wrong. I thought she's got to be mad. But the more that you hear, the more it just confirms these things, and then you start looking at everyone, and unfortunately you do start looking at every organization and just start thinking, well, what is what's behind the closed doors, from I sort of jotted this down before, that evil and corruption is kind of a human trait. Not everyone has it. Some people have incredibly good behavior, and some people have incredibly bad. And it's only a law of average that with good and bad being in society, that good and bad will get in all corporations and organizations, and from the church to the royals to the schools, you'll have good and bad people, and the good become unnoticed when things like this come to head, but it will go on in every facet, from your general work, from your scouts, your schools, the UN, whatever it be. There will always be these evil people in every facet of every part of our lives.
Absolutely. Look, I couldn't agree more with you there. I mean, I don't know what it's going to take for people to actually get out on the streets and march on places. I mean, Luke, you were saying during one of the breaks that it really is. It's at the point of getting the pitchforks out and just getting out on the streets.
I can't see any other way to do it. I mean, just talking about it obviously isn't deterring them, because, they've been exposed verbally for many years now. But I think their lust and their craving for the bad things that they do is like a drug addict will always go back to heroin. These guys will always find ever more lurid ways to to carry out these ritual sadistic killings, abuse, whatever it be. They just will keep going on, and I think the only way they're going to stop is when they're actually in fear. For their safety, because they obviously don't care about the people that they're abusing. It's going to have to be, going to get pitchforks out and oust them and get them to to follow line. You know what I mean? Follow the line.
And look what happens when you do get whistleblowers that actually do come forward. Take the Hampstead case. There'll be other children that will be aware of what is going on, not only in that ring, but other rings as well. And could you imagine the actual swathe of kids that would feel brave enough and have the courage to come forward and name names in their own private rings of hell that they are suffering at the hands at if this case in Hampstead did actually go mega and we managed to get justice for these kids? But can you imagine the effect on all these other children and families that are suffering at the hands of these animals if, like it looks likely now, this case might well get buried and covered up? What hope has any whistleblower of coming out? What encouragement is there for them? And I'm hoping that shows like this, Luke, and just our constant battering of this subject gives people that confidence.
I've got to thank. I don't really know like Chris, Gio, and that, and obviously I'm new to the network, and it is all new to me, and I'm getting used to the names and the guys like Popeye and all of that. But
listen to you. You've been on Sky News. Listen to
it. Sky News, and I did speak to the people from Sky News when they came here and done the interview with me. Once the camera was off, because I knew they'd twist the latter things I had to say, and I told them my a brief view of what I believe to be going on in the world, and it was met with pure silence, a kind of a nod and a shrug of the shoulders, like they're not stupid, mate. These are intelligent people that that were interviewing me. But going back to this station, Truth Frequency, I've got to say a massive big thank you to the people that are that are running this, because there's not many platforms, mate, that you can get this kind of information out. And I want to thank them on behalf of the people that are suffering these heinous crimes and that, because it's a light in the dark that is helping a lot of people. And hopefully, if as long as we don't get taken off air in any way or whatever, as long as we can just keep plugging away with this, it will make a difference, even if it's for just one person. Let's hope it's far more than that. But a big pat on the back to these brave people that have set up this show, mate.
Exactly, and I want to second that. And one of the guys who brought me to the network, Popeye, he's one of the guys behind the scenes that I go to, very supportive on this. And Popeye, this case in Hampstead, we've had Sabine McNeill, who has spoken at the EU Petitions Commission, a quite high-profile woman. She's had to flee the UK. We've had the mother of these children. She's had to flee the UK. And there's going to be another video that I play towards the end of the show, so stay tuned. And this will connect some of the people that the children name to further, hopefully, corroborate at least part of their story. It won't prove their outrageous claims of some of the crimes that may have or may not have taken place, but it will connect the names and it will name the names. And Popeye, we really do have to thank you, and especially Chris and Joe Joseph as well, because these people have fled the UK merely for discussing what we're talking about tonight.
People shouldn't have to be afraid for their lives or speaking truth to power, but this is some evil stuff, dude. This is stuff that this is like game-changing stuff, and they know that. This is things that it's not just politicians either, by the way. I have to just throw this caveat out there. I've had Mark Passio on my show 100 times, and he used to be he's a former dark occultist himself. Okay, former insider.
Well, who better to go to?
Right, very low level. Once he realized what was going on, he bailed out. But I've asked him before, like as an insider, I've said, Mark, please explain, because I already know this. I've had this conversation with Fritz Springmeier too. Fritz has said the same thing when he's been on my show, and he's talked about it. People can go to look in the archives and just go to PopeyeRadio.com. It's really simple. It'll take you to my downloadable archive section and scroll through. You'll see Fritz's name. You'll see Mark Passio's name. Download the shows and listen to them and listen to what these guys have to say. There are pedos in every walk of life. Doctors, lawyers, the police. He says, I just had Mark on like a week and a half ago. We talked about the dark occult. We talked about how they control the police, okay? How they control some of the symbolism and stuff. He said from his knowledge and his research, and remember, he knows things from an insider's perspective. He said that he is convinced that every police department in the United States is run by the dark occult. There's at least one dark occultist inside the higher ranking echelons of each police department inside the United States. And these dark occultists are the people that do these things. Let's not think that this pedophilia is just child rape. That's horrible enough, by the way. And anybody that hurts a child like that should be taken out to the nearest tree and strung up, and as he's swinging, beaten with a baseball bat.
Exactly,
Okay?
Popeye. There's no varying degrees of like, oh, somebody hurts a child and somebody rapes them and somebody murders them. As soon as they hurt them, they've crossed the line. That is it.
Exactly. But what they do, Kev, is even worse than that, because it's not just pedophilia. This stuff gets into... See, this is why you have to end up bringing up mind control, and you end up bringing satanic ritual abuse, trauma-based mind control, it's called, where you literally... The young lady that was talking, and she said on Oprah, and she was talking about multiple personalities and stuff. Well, MPD, people that have MPD, they were abused. It's that simple. You're not born with multiple personality disorder. That comes from being abused. Because what happens is you're put through such a traumatic event that your psyche shatters. Okay? It compartmentalizes to deal with it, because it's that earth-shattering to you. And I'm not talking about PTSD. I'm not talking about watching one of your friends get killed in a war zone, or being in a car accident, or being raped. That's PTSD. That's different. No. I'm talking about things like having your legs popped out of the hip joints, or your arms popped out at the elbows and your wrists popped out and then popped back in. That's some of the stuff that these victims have talked about going through. Mind control, satanic ritual abuse. It's all real. I know people don't want to talk about it because it's uncomfortable, but you know what? Look, would you rather, la, 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 and still allow little kids to get hurt? Because that's disgusting. Sorry, but that's disgusting. If you're going to just sit back on your laurels and let little kids get hurt, I can't be a part of that. I can't.
It really is an epidemic when you see across the board what's going on. And like you said, it's not just the elites, it's not just the occultists, it's going on in our everyday neighborhoods. There's a guy on Facebook and YouTube called Stinson Hunter, and he basically sets them up, Chris Hansen style. And the frequency of the amount of guys that are actually trying to groom what they believe to be 12, 13, 14-year-old boys and girls is absolutely sickening. And I think this is another genuine problem. And you've got social networks and all these sort of chat sites and stuff that the kids are joining up to now. And you just have these paedophiles trolling them and looking for targets, trying to groom them and stuff. But now when Stinson Hunter actually came out and started doing this, it was penalised by the police. There was labelling as some sort of vigilante, even though he wouldn't touch them, he wouldn't beat them up, he'd just document everything and put it online with the evidence to show what they'd been saying, the chat logs, everything like that. And he really didn't get much support from the police until the public really found out about it, and he started turning up on TV shows and documentaries and stuff like that. And yeah, he's doing really well at the moment, but it's just scary how many per day he just catches. It's a genuine epidemic, not just in the elites, it's going on right around us.
Yeah, it is, even on just a local level. A friend of mine back in the 90s, he went out partying and stuff, and he took a few E's and what have you, and he was out having a what appeared to be a good time and that, and it turns out he turned schizophrenic back in 1993 and attacked someone, a woman that was passing his house and stuff. And when it came down to getting in, they sectioned him and took him into hospital, and started analysing what had gone wrong, obviously, because there was a lot of people doing what he had done, but he obviously lost his mind during a period of about just over 18 months. And it turns out that when his mum and dad had been divorced several years before, that he had stayed with his mum, and she'd got a boyfriend that was abusing him and he never told me. I was incredibly close with this lad. He just, he had a real hang up about being gay, and obviously that was, part of his, sort of trying to prove to himself that it wasn't him. It was, it was forced upon him, and I knew nothing of it, and I felt so bad because I'd have gone around and decked this bloke if I'd have found out. You know what I mean? Saddens me to think of it because he was my best mate, and now he's just he's a schizophrenic that attacks people. He's a menace to society, and that's not his fault. That's just a bully bloke that was, abusing him behind his mum's back, and as soon as he was 16, he managed to leave his house and
look,
get out of it. But it affected him 5 or 6 years down the line.
And look, these cases that you're talking about, they are absolutely horrendous. But victims like that are being created right now as we speak. And I watched a New York Police Department unit who were tracking in real time people who were accessing child porn and actively grooming underage children on the internet. Now, they were coming over to the Met to train the British police. And when they were asked if they were out actually raiding the houses, when they showed you the screen, there was a number of red dots. And that highlighted people who were taking part in the things I was saying. Now, they weren't going out and they weren't targeting these people as they were accessing it. And here's my take. Because once these people are identified, as Popeye said, there will at least be one in the police department. Now what happens then is they will go to the shady side of the social services, and they will probably go to that perpetrator, that rapist, that paedophile, and say, listen, you'll probably get jail time here, mate, or you can offer up your victim, the child that you're abusing, into our ring, and we'll make sure you're okay. Now that sounds a bit extreme, doesn't it? But you know what? There is so many cases out there where that is exactly what has happened. You see, they get the dirt on you, and then what do? What does a paedophile do? Does he want outed? Does he want to be a nonce in jail? Or is it easier just to maybe take a child along and hand them over to somebody else for an afternoon, just to keep themselves, the little coward rapist bastards that they are, safe? Evil doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of what we are talking about tonight. And thankfully, we're going to be going for another 2 hours. Now, unfortunately, I think Marty and Luke are going to have to leave the broadcast at this point because they have got prior commitments in the morning. I'm off, so I want to go to Luke first. I want to thank you again, Luke, for everything you've done for KBS and for coming on tonight and for being brave enough and for having the nuts to sit there and say the stuff that you're saying.
No, mate, how much kip I'm going to get, I don't know, to be honest, because it's going over in my mind, and it makes me so angry. It fires me up, and that my anger would probably be deemed as unstable by the laws.
We should be angry.
You know what I mean?
We really
but
should.
But it's a natural reaction. I've held
well,
back.
Before we get cut off, Luke, Marty, been fun again, if that's the right word to use, but I'm glad we're doing this on a Tuesday night, man.
Yeah, absolutely, and I know the music's coming in there, but I'm a little bit fired up over this whole thing, so I might just have to stick around for one more segment.
Yeah, I'm going to stick on for a bit, mate.
Stay tuned, because we're going to be joined by Joe Joseph.
One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It is February 24th, 2015. And actually tonight, we are doing a 3-hour edition, teaming up with the KBS crew to expose scumbaggery of the highest order. Now, what could we be discussing? Well, something makes my skin crawl talking about it, but it needs to be discussed. Child rape, satanic ritual abuse, trauma-based mind control that's involved in it, and all the scumbags that perpetrate it, or at least some of the scumbags. There's so many of them, if we actually started listing names, we'd be here till next month. Literally. Doctors, lawyers, police chiefs.
Priests.
Yeah, your next door neighbor. It's disgusting. Anyway, first I want to say thank you to the KBS crew for hanging out for extra time. I want to say thanks to Luke. Thank you for hanging out for a couple extra segments, however long, 15, 20, 30, however long. Thank you to Joe. We're joined by Joe Joseph, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Joe, for coming on.
Man, I tell you what, that was that first hour. Holy mackerel, man. I mean, just people don't understand just how bad this stuff really is. That's why I kind of felt it so important that we all get to, this is huge. You don't see groups of people talking about this, and it needs to be talked about.
By the way, if you want to see more stuff about this, you can go to federaljack.com/mind control. federaljack.com/mind control. You can actually download the victim testimonies and stuff. Some of the stuff I'm going to play tonight. Some of the audio you're going to hear tonight. Yeah, it's going to make you want to puke, just so you know. But it is what it is. Ugh. I don't even. Ugh.
When you said there about puking, I actually thought that might be a cue for my next clip.
No, you could actually. We could get into that, Kev. We're going to talk about Savile tonight, so we might. I guess puking dead people. We might as well bring it up, right?
Popeye, when we address Savile, I want to make it really clear to the listeners. This is a historic case. That's all fair and well. But right now, there must be other procurers of children for the royals, for the top echelons of the government, for all these high-ranking elites. Yes, it goes on at all levels, but right now, Savile is a good example, Joe. And it wasn't just child rape that he was into, as bad as that was. He wasn't just helping to murder children with a former Prime Minister of the UK. No. His depravity would go a lot further than that. And I think no better person than to play a clip of right now would be Bill Maloney. Now, Bill Maloney has been for years speaking up on behalf of victims, both dead and alive, may I add, at much risk to his own personal health. You don't really do the stuff that Bill Maloney's doing without some serious risk coming your way. The people he has named, just for example, he's the guy that people will have seen challenging Nick Clegg right outside the House of Commons about a question he had put to him 4 years previously about the establishment paedophile rings. And what did Nick Clegg do? He ran away like the little sympathiser that he is. I only say sympathiser because I've no evidence that he was actually at it yet. But let's listen to the kind of depravity that Savile himself was into. And I'm not doing this for shock value. It's to actually give you an example of what is going on right now.
Let's just go straight into it.
Let's go straight into
it. The witness that I'm talking to from Operation Fernbridge made 2 films of Jimmy Savile.
Right.
2 very special films of Jimmy Savile. In one of those films, he was abusing a dead young girl in a mortuary. In the other film, he was filming a dead young boy.
But Sidney Cook was a friend
with Jimmy Savile.
Of Jimmy Savile.
Robert Maxwell was a paedophile, and that is it. And Robert Maxwell is now dead. And Robert Maxwell, our witness, had actually had a sexual encounter with Robert Maxwell and been on his boat quite a few times and seen many powerful people there from the media. You know, it's a horrendous story. And then we've got a picture of Prince Andrew with his arm around an underage prostitute, Charles Napier.
Charles Napier was paedophile information exchange, because I've been looking since, you and I had that kind of conversation about a month ago. I started looking who this Charles Napier is. I believe he had a boat which kids would go onto the boat, and they'd go a sailing boat, and then people would
but they weren't just any kids. He had Down syndrome kids and disabled kids on that boat. I believe that the Pilkingtons had something to do with the killing or the death of my brother Peter. So there you go, and that's the Glass people. So you Pilkingtons out there, I hope there's at least one of you listening, and I'd love your lawyers to come and talk to me, and we can talk about Peter Maloney, my brother, who was found dead after, Alistair Pilkington had been messing about with. If you look at the guy who's in charge, DTRH Settle, he's the guy in charge of Operation Fernbridge.
Right.
That's his name, right? He's a detective inspector, Settle. He was head of the Royal Protection. He used to protect the Queen. Why are you there, Settle? Why are you there? Why have you told Andrew he's not allowed to talk about the royals? Why have you told Andrew that he's not to talk about the serving politician or the serving chancellor? Why are you following him everywhere? When we went up, because I'm in the middle of making a documentary with this guy, and when we went up to his house, he had been bugged. A bug was found in his house. And like you say, there is royalty involved. There's no two ways about it. Everyone is involved, the hierarchy. That was their playground. They've done what they wanted to do. I believe that there's going to be a big name coming out this weekend. I hope it's coming out, because I've been promised by the national media that it's been coming out for a few weeks. But there is a guy that I've been working with in the national media, and he's a good guy. If they don't name, right, this high cabinet minister, right, who's in Margaret Thatcher's time, very, very powerful man. If they don't name it this weekend, I'll name it next week. How's that? I'll come on your show and I'll name this bastard who done it, because I've got a list that would bring this country to its knees. It's like the female politician that they won't name. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't name who
I know,
she was.
but there's most people have got it.
Yeah. But when paedophilia, you know what I mean, it's like this subject, when it starts affecting what you're eating and what you're not. I can't eat a curry anymore.
So there you go, folks. And I mean, in there we heard about Prince Andrew, and that gives us the link to the palace as well. And Jimmy Savile and his links to the palace, well, they date back Sir Jimmy Savile as well. And I've just got one clip here to show you just how close to the royal family this guy really is. Take a listen to this.
Shall I tell you a very good fix that I did with a young lady at Buckingham Palace? I was at a reception at Buckingham Palace. That's the place where the Queen lives and Prince.
I know, they keep the Queen there,
And it's not an easy gaff to penetrate. Very, very...
What's that? That an easy...
There's not an easy place to get into.
Aha! Yeah.
So I was at this reception, and there was a very nice lady and gentleman said to me, "My daughter will be so pleased to know that I've met you," and this, that, and the other. And I said, "Oh, yes. Where is she?" And they said, "She's in the back of the car." I said, "What, in the boat?" No, we've sneaked her in the back of the car so she can say she's been in the palace courtyard. I said, and you've got her stuck out there? I said, oh, leave it to me. And they went, no, Peter, no. Then they grabbed her. I said, no. So I went to see a minder and said, they've got this situation and I'm bringing a friend in. So I said, listen, who's going to object to you? So I said, all right. Now, the palace staff are the most excellent people, right? On the way out, I explained very briefly what I was doing. Leave it to us. So I went out into the car park, which is a courtyard inside the palace, and I shouted the young lady's name. Next minute, she's holding my arm, and next minute we're marching up the steps right into the palace. Well, the staff had done it right. The 2 footmen opened the 2 great doors, and inside there were all the majors and the colonels and the household staff. It's a most elegant situation and tremendously rewarding, right? And of course, when she sees this spectacle of the carpet and the people all standing there, and they all give a little graceful dip as she walked by, and she was now hanging onto me like a lifebelt, right? And we walked up the steps and into the room where the reception was, in a room called the Bow Room, and fantastic look. Prince Philip was a marvellous geezer, happened to be just standing inside the door, parroting to somebody. So I went.
It's a prearranged signal, no doubt.
Well, no, there's not a lot of people go psst inside the palace. What are you doing? So he's from the butchers, like this. See me, and I do the nod. Put a kid away. So he doesn't know where this young lady's appeared from, but he's a long coat on and bumpy shoes, but he has given the beautiful smile, and she's gone, right? That was a fix-it that I really enjoyed, and I think she might remember it, even if her parents and herself are watching tonight, she might even remember it to this day, and I think...
Oh, I bet you she remembers that to this day. Did you hear him? I mean, he was actually talking about smuggling somebody's child who was in the boot of a car into the side entrance of Buckingham Palace and then made a catcalling noise to Prince Philip, the husband of the Queen. And then he says that her and her parents will remember that to this day. One of his very favourite fix-its.
Into the wood chipper. Into the wood chipper with him. Into the wood chipper.
Wow.
They just feel like they can get away and do anything with their subjects, as it were. Their menial little bloody, like we're cattle that can just be, harvested. It's their
well, let me ask you,
it's their laws, we're their property.
Let me ask you something, Luke. Can't they though?
Well, I guess the laws are set up that they can, mate. It would appear so. But
because who's holding them to account? No. Popeye and I have already stated, bring us your tyrants. You don't have to kill them. We will do it for you.
Yes, welcome to
I promise. Bring us your tyrants, your pedos, your
we find
criminals, and we will.
Let's fill it up and send it your way.
I'm telling you, man, I don't care how you do it. We'll take care of it.
Joe,
Popeye, are we attracting the attention of GCHQ? Are they trying to block you out of Skype right now?
Dude, it was the weirdest thing. Like, all of a sudden, I got disconnected, and I couldn't, the conversation, just, I couldn't get back into it. I would message you, and it would the message was just sitting there twirling, and it would show up gray. I had to go hunt you down on Skype elsewhere and be like, Kev, can you add me back? I had to reset Skype twice.
I had exactly that at Christmas. Remember when I was on Kevin, it just, whatever happened, it would not allow me to come on.
Shite happens when you talk about very important stuff.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's just a coincidence that Microsoft owns Skype. I'm sure that there's no way.
Would you stop with that? Who cares? Let's just keep going. This is good stuff.
I think we should probably, there's enough from Jimmy Savile out there. We can go and watch clips of him openly on the BBC, on Top of the Pops. That's the same as maybe your Billboard guys, like the top songs of the day. They would come on and play to a live audience. And he actually sat there in front of the cameras, openly fondling and groping children. Now, you think creepy Biden is bad? This guy absolutely, he takes it to new levels, Martin, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's really important to point this stuff out, guys, because it's really beyond the public's perception to think that people of importance or people in power or in the spotlight would really be up to this sort of stuff. And as for the royals in the UK, the connections that came out due to the Savile case, absolutely mind-blowing. And for those people that wonder why they're not brought to account, go and look up the divine right to rule. And that has been a bill that has been set in place since medieval times, which states that no member of the monarchy will be judged for any crime whatsoever. And apparently that is up to God to judge, and that anybody that tries to judge them will have to answer to God. And it's basically fear porn wrote in this bill, and you can see why none of these...
Hey, you know what? It's not... They're correct, Marty, by the way. It's not up for any of us to judge them. It's just it's up to us to arrange the meeting, okay? So... I will gladly arrange the meeting if you'd like to meet your God.
That's right.
And be judged by him.
We're not judging anybody. No. We're just putting you in the express lane.
Yeah,
that's all.
Consider it like public transportation.
I do want to say this because this came up kind of in the forefront in the United States, not to change the subject too much, but dealing with, sexual crime and things like that with the Bill Cosby thing. A lot of people were rocked and even to this day deny that Cosby did anything. And, you're innocent until proven guilty. But something that's a big problem, and media has done a lot to cultivate this, is the cult of personalities that exist. And, everybody praises the personality, but you don't know who that real person is that lurks beneath that personality.
Dude, they're actors. They're acting.
Exactly. That's what they're doing. Right.
Look at Savile, right? Savile's a perfect example. This guy was a children's show host, right, Kev? He was a children's show host.
Well, get this, Popeye. The guy was actually nothing. He turned up in Leeds, a North Yorkshire city, bit of an eccentric kind of dude. He would go about town dressed up in all kinds of kind of regalia. He got a job in a nightclub, became a bit of a successful DJ there. Ended up on a BBC radio show, and then from there, he's entering the side door of the palace and on first-name terms with Prince Philip and the rest of them, and acting as a confidant to the likes of Charles and Diana and Andrew and Fergie. What? Somebody who allegedly fucked his dead mother, and I'm sorry if that offends people, but if me saying it offends people, go and get your priorities right. He done it, not me. He was doing that in a BBC changing room, his own dressing room, a building that he treated very much like the paedophile palace that he basically had the keys to. But it's enough of me saying all of this. I think we should probably hear from one of his poor victims. And just think, folks, there's probably, they reckon, at least 1,000 people with this similar story to tell. Take a listen to this.
BBC TV personality Jimmy Savile was so beloved in Britain that 9-year-old Kevin Cook was over the moon when his scout troop was invited onto the Jim'll Fix It show in 1974. He spoke to us on condition we do not show his face.
He was almost godlike. I mean, everybody, he was so famous. It was just the best feeling in the world. I don't think, anything else could have put me on more of a high.
It was such an honor, his parents saved this newspaper clipping about the show. But Kevin Cook says all that changed when Savile lured the 9-year-old into a BBC dressing room with promises of a coveted Jim'll Fix It badge.
That was when he said to me, would you still want your badge? And I said, yeah. And he said to me, you want to earn your badge? And I said, yeah. And then that was when it happened. He put his hand on my knee and then he started touching my leg. He tried to put his hand underneath up my leg into my shorts, which he couldn't do. And that's when he undid my zip and my clasp and pulled my shorts down. And then he started fondling me. And at the same time, he then grabbed my hand and made me touch him on top of his trousers. And at this stage, there was a knock on the door. And then somebody walked straight in, looked, saw us in there, and then walked straight back out. And then that was it. It was over. He said to me, don't you dare tell anybody about this. Nobody will believe you because I'm King Jimmy.
A threat so powerful that Kevin Cook says he kept it secret for more than 3 decades. He tried to bury the past and ripped this publicity photo from that day. You can still see where it's torn.
I just hated the man. I can remember the day that, it was a few months after this happened that the actual show came on the TV, and I can remember my parents and everybody so excited, to watch it, and I can just remember watching it, cringing. Even after all these years, I still can't watch the man. I blamed myself for 37 years. That's the first thing. You do blame yourself. And then, I'm realising that it's not my fault. And, that was a relief.
I'll still be here.
Jimmy Savile, once the face of the BBC, adored by fans. But Kevin Cook and other alleged victims say King Jimmy used his popularity and power to prey upon children. And they blame, in part, the BBC.
I feel hatred towards them as well, because somebody must have known something, and obviously it was just covered up.
Jimmy Savile is dead, and Kevin Cook has no hope for justice. But, he says, he wants to know just how much the BBC knew and when. Most important, if they could have prevented King Jimmy from abusing him and others.
There you go, folks. And just think, between 4 and 7 occasions, the police had the chance to put a stop to all of this. But they didn't. And yet, you have these people referring back to this case, the Hampstead case, how it's all just one big giant hoax. Surely this is the cover-up that could be in motion.
Absolutely.
People buy into that cult of personality. The Jimmy Savile, King Jimmy. Everybody bought into it. The
defense goes down, don't they? When when they're starstruck, and it's like they almost become sort of lemmings. They're just led into a hopeless situation, really, or helpless situations.
And one of his co-hosts on his early shows on the BBC, they were out on a road trip. Now, they decided to, or Jimmy told him, they were going to be pulling into a roadside cafe. Now, Jimmy said to his friend, "Go and get yourself something to eat." And he was hungry. He went into the cafe, and Jimmy claimed he was just going to get a sleep. Now, there was a kind of camper van they were travelling in. So his friend, his co-host, he had finished his food, sat and had a coffee, gave Jimmy enough time, he thought, to have this sleep that he said he needed. And when he went back out to the camper truck, he actually was met by 2 young girls, almost acting as if they were in fear, running away, coming out at the back of the camper van. Now, he was very troubled by what he'd seen, and he went to his BBC bosses, and they responded by saying, "Well, that's just Jimmy. That's Jimmy. Don't say anything. That's just what he does." So you think about that, guys. You're somebody, is it somebody's parent who delivered a child, 2 children, to Savile in a lay-by at the side of a road? Is that really how bad this really is?
Well, they do say that that's how a lot of these big rings work. They seem to share the victims about, and like you say, it's part of a collective, so they don't expose each other. Absolutely shocking.
Well, actually, I have a clip. I'm going to play it on the other side because the break's coming up and there's not enough time. But I have a clip. This came out about a year ago. It's actually from your side of the pond, boys. And I was actually surprised. They were looking into this whole pedophile scandal, and they found out that a lot of the people that were involved in either the investigation or the scandal itself were, shockingly enough, Freemasons. So they were part of a secret society. And I'm not saying all Freemasons are evil or that's idiocy. What I'm saying is, shockingly enough, people that are involved in scumbaggery are part of a secret society that uses said secret society to actually hide their separate secret society inside of it. Albert Pike actually talked about it. You have to actually go do a little research. You can't just say all Freemasons are bad. That would That it's not logical, it's not true, it's not factual. And if you actually say that in a debate, you can easily be shot down and destroyed. And that's usually what happens. And that's why people end up sounding like they don't make any sense, or like the mainstream likes to call us, conspiratards. So you have to understand. But yes, interestingly enough, gentlemen, almost everyone in the UK pedophile ring is involved in Freemasonry. And this is the one that went back to children in North Wales being abused, and it was connected to like judges and police and stuff.
And guess who covered that up, folks? William Hague. Now, William Hague,
big surprise, Kev. Hold on, I got to cut us off because the break's going to sneak up. Ladies and gentlemen, do not go anywhere. 3 short minutes. We will be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Before we go back into it, because I got some audio I want to play for you, one of us has to bail. So, Luke, I know you have to go because you are a busy man and you've already been hanging out a little over an hour and gave us some extra time. So, thank you so much tonight, brother. I appreciate it.
That's cool, man. Yeah, so up at 6, so riveted with this, but I will catch the rest of it tomorrow because, it'll be on my mind, and I want to hear what you guys have got to say. And that, just a quick one before I do, something I was looking at before is the United Nations, a company called DynCorp of Virginia, involved in weapons trafficking and human trafficking. And there's someone called Miss Bolkovacs, I think, and she had a story that was written called Whistleblower. And it was all about, it involved over 12 countries, child trafficking, I think through, possibly like Bosnia and all of that region. And, back in the 90s, that's, even quite a modern sort of thing. But, so it is out there. People are, there are companies even making films about, these things. So, hopefully we just keep the awareness up. But thanks again, guys, for asking me on. And, stay safe and be strong. And I'll catch you all soon.
Look, awesome, man. Thanks for being on tonight.
Yeah, thanks,
no
bro.
worries. Take care. Bye-bye.
Later, brother. And by the way, DynCorp, you can just go on Google, onto the beast itself there, and type in DynCorp traffics children for sex with Afghan police. And that should bring up enough articles and links. This actually came out. Like, an American contractor was trafficking children for Afghani police. Because some of them are into that, and it's more widely accepted in other cultures, young boys, and they actually traffic them. Like our government sanctioned this. They say, of course, we didn't do it. It wasn't a government agency. No, you have your mercenary agencies do it. That way you can say, well, it wasn't me, right? That's how they do things. Anyway, guys, I have since we're talking about Savile, I have a clip I want to play, and it's actually, whenever I get into this, it's usually one that I air. It's from an interview that Ike did back in 2012. It's actually from October 18th of 2012, I believe. And it's about 17, almost 18 minutes long, but he's talking with Red Ice, the host of Red Ice, Henrik, and he gets into Savile and his background and his connections to people like Lord Mountbatten, which if you want to understand like the depths of this, you don't have to believe the reptilian stuff that Ike talks about, whatever. But if you go read The Biggest Secret, that book has a ton of information in it, and it's sourced. So what's nice is in each chapter he gives you the information to go look at, and you can go research it for yourself, okay? So I suggest you go get his book. You don't have to believe the reptilian thing. I don't expect anybody to believe anything, okay, at all. But I would ask you to at least go, you can go to the...
Tell you what though, Popeye, he did claim on the reptilian kind of thing. We were talking about Ted Heath earlier on. Well, the two of them were on a BBC show at one point, and David Icke swears to this day that it wasn't the reptilian eyes that Heath gave him, but when he turned round, it was just black. His full eyes were just black. And Ike he still doesn't know what to make of that. So make of that what you will.
Oh, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, it really wouldn't surprise me. If they, like I said, if one day Hillary Clinton or the Queen or any of these people ripped their face off and they actually were lizards underneath, it wouldn't, honestly, at this point, it would not surprise me.
Well, we always say they hide it in plain sight, Popeye. And I remember the first series when Angela revealed, in fact, it was Diana, wasn't it? She revealed herself by ripping the skin back.
Yeah, but how fitting. The name the name Diana. Oh, the goddess Diana. Maybe people should Google the goddess Diana. Anyway, before we get too sidetracked, let me play this clip. This is Ike talking about Savile and his just depravity and his perversions, including some of the stuff that we already talked about where he liked to have sex with dead people. Now, the reason I'm playing this is because it's not just Kev, Joe, Luke, Marty, and myself talking about this. Here you have yet another 2 researchers who have, look, like him or not, Ike's done a lot of research and he's exposed a lot of these pedophile scumbags for years. You could say what you want, but the guy's been on point about this stuff. So, put everything, if you dislike him, put all that aside and just realize that this information is 150% on point and accurate. So here we go.
David, I want to shift focus just a little bit here in the last 10, 15 minutes or so that we have here. And I wanted to ask you about the business of this Jimmy Savile in the UK right now. I've only peripherally kind of read about this. And how does this tie into the larger picture of what's going on right now?
Well, this was fascinating to me when this came out, because I've been talking about this guy, Jimmy Savile, being a pedophile and a necrophiliac. He used to have a thing about sex with dead people. For many years, back to the late 90s. And of course, Ike's a nutter and all that stuff. But a television program has just come out. He died in 2011, Jimmy Savile, at the age of 84. And a television program came out which exposed the fact that he, over a long period of time, for decades, and more's come out now. I mean, crikey, it's just exploding. This guy must been at it all the time. But he was abusing underage children, usually girls. That's come out, but actually there's more to it than that. And he worked at the BBC. That was his main, prime point of public exposure. And he used to do a lot of charity work. He used to run marathons. He used to volunteer to be porters in hospitals, and he used to have charities to raise money for hospitals. And these hospitals would give him a room, an office, even sometimes a bedroom in the hospital. He used to do the same at a place called Broadmoor for, seriously mentally disturbed people and criminals and killers as a result of their psychiatric state. And he was seen as the national treasure. He started out in the late 50s, early 60s, when the great swinging 60s music scene started in Britain, and a new genre appeared called the disc jockey. He started out on Radio Luxembourg, this kind of iconic radio station of the 60s, and then he went into the BBC and all that stuff. And he openly talked about his closeness to the British royal family. And later on in years, he would talk about the fact that he was untouchable, that there was nothing he couldn't do, and there was no one that could touch him, whatever he did, and all the rest of it. And he died, this old guy of 84, and he was given a hero's funeral. Jimmy Savile, what a great man. Good on you, Governor. Well, that's not what they're thinking now, because the dike has been breached and it's coming out. But what is coming out? At the moment, what's coming out is that he was the most serial pedophile, and also that he started his charities and did his charity work to get access to children and stuff in hospitals. Well, he did something else, as I was pointing out back in the late 90s, Henrik. He got involved with hospitals because hospitals have mortuaries. Satisfy his love of sex with dead bodies and stuff. I mean, this man was seriously way out there. But this is the bigger picture. And what's not coming out, but should, and I was talking to a journalist today about it, I hope something will move forward as a result of it, is the reason he was untouchable, the reason that he could do anything he liked, and that there were, over the years, police investigations started into claims of his pedophilia with underage girls, but those investigations came nowhere, was because that he wasn't just a pedophile, he was a procurer of children for the rich and famous, including the royal family. It's not a accident or coincidence that Savile, in his own words, said that he was introduced to the royal family, first of all in the 1960s, by a man called Lord Louis Mountbatten, who was a known paedophile by anyone who's investigated this. And it was Mountbatten that introduced Savile to Prince Philip and Prince Charles, and Savile became very, very close to both of them until he had a massive row, apparently, with Philip. And I was told all this in the late 90s by a lady called Christine Fitzgerald, who had been a close friend of and confidant of Princess Diana for 9 years, acknowledged as such by the media. But they fell out in the last little while before Diana was killed. But she told me about Mountbatten. She told me about Charles. She told me about what went on in the royal family, about the Satanism, about the pedophilia, and also what was left field for me at the time about Jimmy Savile, as others have too. And I said to them, you know, why would the royal family be so close to this aging disc jockey? And then they told me about the pedophilia and the necrophilia and all the rest of it. And so because he was a procurer of children, it meant that he was never going to go down so long as he kept quiet and you know, played the game as they wanted it played, and doing what he was doing for them. He would never go down because their backs and his back are the same back, because if he goes to court and starts blubbing, then they're in trouble. So this is one of the reasons that this secrecy and protection is so powerful within these pedophile and satanic rings, Henrik. It's because all the backs are dependent upon other backs not being, you know, collared for this stuff. So they support each other. And if you've got your people in the judiciary, in the law, in politics, in social services, in law enforcement, police and stuff, then you have, and in coroners' offices and all the rest of it, then you have the ring in the places that can put the lid on something and stop the truth coming out. This man, Thomas Hamilton, who shot all the children at the Dunblane school in Scotland in 1996, he was a procurer of children. He was a paedophile himself, but he was a procurer of children for the rich and famous. And what happens is one of two things. If you're doing that and you're playing the game, as Savile was, keeping his mouth shut, he actually ddid an interview with Esquire magazine in which he actually said that one of the reasons that he was liked by the royal family is that he was able to work, quote, deep cover and do things which no one knew he was doing. And he said that the royal family were always asking him to Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, where Princess Diana lived after the breakup with Charles, to Highgrove, Charles's country estate, and all the rest of it. And he said, they like the way that I have a laugh and my sense of humor. Well, I don't think that one of the most powerful families on earth are going to allow and invite so constantly, so regularly, a aging disc jockey into their inner sanctum just because he's a good laugh. And also, according to Savile, he was invited to have Christmas dinner with Margaret Thatcher many times over the years when she was Prime Minister. And now the stories are starting to appear about the fact that Savile was providing children for a guy called Ted Heath. Well, Ted Heath was in my books, The Biggest Secret. It came out in 1998. When I named him, 5-7 years before he died, he was still a politician, as not just a practicing Satanist and pedophile, but a serial child killer. And the passage in the book was read to him by a journalist as soon as after it came out in 1998, and nothing happened because I was spot on with that, because I don't cross the line to naming people like that unless I've got a lot of research, and I'm absolutely sure. I don't want to name people when it's not true.
Sure.
And Heath has been connected to the Jersey Children's Home. That story that broke some years ago, and then the genuine police investigation was blocked, just as the one in Belgium was with Mark Dutroux.
That's right.
Savile's connected to the same Jersey Children's Home. He denied through his lawyer when a newspaper mentioned some years ago, when the story broke about the Jersey home, that he had been there, and he denied he'd ever been there. And then pictures appeared of him with the kids. So all this stuff with Savile, I wrote an article at the weekend. I called it Jimmy Savile, Doorway to the Cesspit, because he is. Because if you carry on researching through his own paedophilia, which is what the mainstream media in Britain are pretty much holding it at the moment, and you go into the procurement of children for the rich and famous that he was up to, then the questions the media are asking now is, how could he work at the BBC and he'd be abusing underage girls in BBC dressing rooms, and BBC people knew about it? How could he do this? How could he do that? How come he was never known? How come there wasn't an investigation? Well, once you take in or bring in he was procuring children for the rich and famous, then you know why none of that happened. And it is an opportunity to really lift the lid on some of this stuff, and for people to start to realize that, it's not crazy to say these things have been going on. It is just telling the truth. In fact, he has a nephew, Jimmy Savile, called Guy Marsden, who's now he's 59. I think he's 59. And he talked to a newspaper recently after the Jimmy Savile story broke, in which he told a story of him and his mates. He comes from Leeds in the north of England, this area where Savile comes from and lived. And he said they ran away from Leeds, got on I think it was a train to London, and ended up at King's Cross Station in London, which is a notorious place for paedophiles picking up kids who've run away from home. And he said they got to Euston Station and they were picked up by this sleazy guy and taken to this grubby flat. He said about 4 days later, Jimmy Savile, his uncle, turns up at the flat, this grubby flat. And it turns out it's a coincidence. He doesn't know his nephew's there, because his nephew's not told anybody, hasn't told his parents or anything. But Savile's turned up, not because his nephew's there, but to meet the sleazy guy who picked him up at Euston Station. And when Savile saw his nephew, the nephew says in this interview, I thought I was in trouble because I'd run away from home and hadn't told my parents where I was. But no, he said what Jimmy Savile did, Uncle Jimmy, is he just took them to a better place. And it was the plush home of some pop music impresario, as he says, but he didn't name him. And this plush place and one or two others he was taken to with his mates were the venues for paedophile parties, when famous people in film, television, everything, entertainment, came and abused these kids, but never abused the kids from Leeds. They were left out of it, probably because of, it was Jimmy Savile's nephew. But Jimmy Savile, he said, would bring children to the parties, and he said sometimes he would come with a man dressed as a priest, which made them think that, hey, these kids are coming from children's homes, which is exactly right. First of all, you have these bloodlines which are genetically and for other reasons addicted to pedophilia, and then you need to satisfy that demand, shall we say,
right.
You people procuring children for those people. And the people procuring them need children to procure. And what they do, they target children's homes where the parents are not there to look after them. Often people in the ring are on the staff in the children's homes, sometimes in completely staffing children's homes, some of them. And thus, every now and again, you have these pedophile children's home scandals which break, the lid gets on them and people forget about it, and it carries on as before. And this is what's going on, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
People are going about their lives and watching the game show and watching the, X Factor and all this stuff. This is what's happening in the world, in the peripheral vision that you're not seeing.
Yeah. And it's also after of course, he's dead and buried, that this comes out. This is at a time when he can't talk about it and potentially point any fingers that would implicate others that have been participating in these kinds of activities. How did this break, by the way? Who told was there a BBC documentary about this, you said?
No, I said there's another story there, because we have a current affairs program on BBC. It goes out every weeknight, quite late, called Newsnight, and it looks at the stories of the day and the stories of the time in more depth than the news bulletins do.
Yeah.
And after his death in 2011, they began an investigation into the background to Jimmy Savile in terms of his pedophilia. And again, there is going to be a so-called independent investigation into this. People don't know why. The investigation at a late stage before broadcast was blocked and stopped from being made public. And one of the suggestions is it's because the BBC at that time had a series of programs all ready to go, eulogizing this wonderful man, Jimmy Savile, and all the great work he did and all the rest of it. And they didn't want to spoil that party. But whatever was the reason, it was suppressed.
Yeah.
What actually happened, it came out of nowhere, really, is that it was suddenly announced that this independent television documentary was going out to expose Jimmy Savile's pedophilia against underage girls who'd come forward. And there was a great friend, an associate of Jimmy Savile, called Jonathan King, who was a pop impresario, could well have been the one this nephew was talking about. And he went to jail a few years ago for pedophilia. And there was another guy, a close friend of Jimmy Savile, called Gary Glitter, a pop star, who also went to prison for pedophilia. But, Jimmy Savile was Teflon man and stayed out of the loop. And the person that the police investigator who put Jonathan King away was actually the man who did the investigation for the program and came up with the story that he did. But what happened with that is that it breached the dike. It was interesting in and of itself that it exposed Savile up to a point with underage girls. But what has followed that, Henrik, is just an explosion of other people coming forward now with the confidence that they're going to be listened to at last.
Right.
About a week ago, I've not seen it since, but about a week ago, the police said they were up to 340 leads in the investigation into Savile's activities. Well, as I said at the time, think of any number you like, double it and multiply it, and then you'll get something like the number of victims of Savile over 50 years and more, 50, 60 years.
Wow. Yeah, more of this is being revealed every day now. It's horrible stuff, but at least it's coming to the surface, and as we have said many times before, at least when we begin to find out, we can do something about it, get it into the mass consciousness, and then hopefully at some point be able to prevent all of this as well.
All right, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, and you can do the research yourself. Again, federaljack.com/Popeye, /mind control, federaljack.com/mind control. And that'll bring you to the mind control page, the download little section I have for it. And it's got all the stuff about satanic ritual abuse, the stuff that Savile was involved, because it all dovetails. So all of that stuff is there. We got about 3 minutes till the break comes up. On the other side, I have 2 more clips. One of them is the clip I wanted to play. It's just not enough time, and I don't want to cut it off. I want you guys to hear it. It's about like I said, the people involved in this UK pedophile scandal from about a year and a half ago, and they just all happen to be Freemasons. So, Marty, your thoughts on what you just heard? Anything you want to add or throw in there?
That was a really great clip, Popeye. Thanks for sharing that with us. I don't know if you guys heard the rumours that Savile was one of many gatekeepers, and that there was secret cameras and recording equipment throughout his home media actually did a report on that not long after the scandal came out. And some would say that he used to hold these parties with the elites and all kinds of shenanigans would go on. It would be filmed and documented and maybe used as some sort of blackmail should anyone come out against them. And I just think that there's a whole treasure chest somewhere out there with videos and documents of all this stuff going on. I think it's how they really keep the secrecy going. I don't know if you guys agree.
Well, I think it even goes deeper than that, because if we take into consideration his close ties to Ted Heath, and then the fact that he used to go to Chequers, the Prime Minister's private residence, every Christmas with Margaret Thatcher. Now, it's alleged that what would happen there is, as Marty said there, he would collate all this dirt, all this evidence on these high-level or upcoming political figures in many cases, and they would then be compromised. And the reason for doing that is when Margaret Thatcher would realise there was someone in her party that was taking part in that, much in the same vein as I was saying earlier on, that it's held over their head. Either they work with the people who have got the dirt or they get outed. Well, any vote that Margaret Thatcher had to carry out in Cabinet, if she filled it with paedophiles like it's alleged she did, and it's coming out that she did, then she had every single vote bought and paid for, because they're not going to go against their master who knows the dirt. And
well, it's the same way. It's the same way.
It's Epstein, because he was recording them all and getting the sex slaves.
It's the same thing, and it's also the same way that they'd run Bohemian Grove and all those little adventurous outings that they have. For
and
2-3 weeks out in the woods.
Wasn't it Hoover that was tapping everyone, wiretapping everyone?
Well, yes, but that's why they keep all that stuff. That way they can, they have dirt and they can control people. That's how they operate. They're just scum. I mean, they don't even care about themselves. They screw each other over. I mean, they're parasitic. They're just parasites. Anyway, break is sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. When we come back, hour went by already. We have more audio that you might find shocking, but you need to hear. federaljack.com/mind control. Download everything. Educate yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from federaljack.com. It's actually hour number 3 of the broadcast tonight. This is a special broadcast. Myself and the crew of KBS and Joe Joseph of the Freedom Link Radio have all got together to discuss the disgusting behavior of the pedophile elites. People are absolutely disgusting. The people that perpetrate these crimes need to just be put in a wood chipper. If you disagree and you tell me, oh, well, maybe we could try to talk to them, Popeye. No, there's no talking. Yeah, it's not quick. Dude, we just need to be done with it.
Yeah, I know, but I want to make, come on. Just a little bit.
Okay. First, you give the victims a baseball bat. And
I'll go with that.
You tie the person to a chair so they can't get up and defend themselves.
How about a nail bat? Can we do a nail bat?
And let the victim make the perpetrator feel what it feels like to feel helpless. But before we get too sidetracked, because the last segment, I want to do open mic and pick your brains about the stuff that I'm going to play. But I want you guys to take a second and listen, especially Marty, you and Kev. Because I think, Kev, you know about this because this clip's actually available over on Kev's YouTube channel, which I believe is it's like Truth Tube 451, right, Kev? Isn't it the title?
One Popeye, yeah.
Yes, it's no longer Celtic Kev.
Yeah,
or Mr. Glasgow Truther.
Or Mr. Glasgow Truther. Those have all been shut down.
Risen from the dead 3 times. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Not bad.
Yeah, man.
Hey, man, that's what happens when you speak truth to power. If you put kitten videos up, it's fine. If you just put up a video about kittens, Kev, it would have 18 million hits, and you'd never have any problems.
It's dodgy now though, because I'd probably be classed as an ISIS recruiter. All it's missing is my Nutella.
That's true, and YouTube did actually copyright strike somebody for their cat having a video of their cat purring. Don't ask. Anyway, there's a video. I know it's available on your channel. And it's from about a year and a half ago, this investigation up in Wales, and it's involving this. When I say this pedophile ring, I'm referring to the overall large pedophile ring that is connected worldwide, and the one we're talking about tonight. And this one involves members of the police, judges and stuff being involved in this ring. And surprisingly enough, it comes up that, oh, wow, they just happen to be part of the local Freemason organization in that area. Big surprise. So here, check it out. And I'll get your thoughts on this afterwards, Kev and Marty, about, especially who these people are and what has happened since this. But here, I want for the listeners, check this out.
Well, joining me now is Councillor Keith Gregory, who you just saw in that report from Kieran Jenkins, and Bill Brereton, a former Deputy Police Commissioner here in North Wales. Well, Keith Gregory, do you have any confidence now that you'll be listened to and believed in these latest inquiries?
I'm quite hopeful. I'm quite confident, to be honest, now that the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary and the Welsh Assembly have promised not to leave no stones unturned, and that I'm quite hopeful.
The Waterhouse inquiry promised that, though, last time. What gives you that hope that things will be different now?
I think people have changed the views that people used to think about.
The culture's changed.
Yeah, culture change, that's what it is.
Bill Brereton, we've had dozens of police investigations, more than a dozen council inquiries, the Waterhouse report, all of these inquiries, and yet so few convictions. Why do you think that is?
I think there's lots of reasons. I mean, for me, the way forward is quite properly to have an outside force investigation, and that's been called for, as I understand it. I think it's very important that right up front, everyone is required to declare whether they have been or currently are a Mason. Section 81 of the Waterhouse report touches on it very fleetingly. It may or may not be a problem, but let's have it out in the open and make sure that people know what's going on.
Well, because the Masons were, and maybe still are, very powerful here. I mean, do you think there were people being protected by pillars of the establishment?
I don't know. I mean, there's an investigation to be done, and clearly that's not me because I'm retired. But the fact that the questions there needs solving, it needs clearing once and for all, and the suggestion that there could be undue influences has to be dealt with. I was never a Mason, never have been, never will be, and I was always very clear on that, and therefore it never touched on me. But I think it's that concern that if you don't know, you just don't know what's going on in the background.
Keith Gregory, the Masons, an avenue that needs to be investigated?
Masons definitely need to be investigated, especially here in North Wales. I think nearly everyone, especially on the list that I have, are all members of some sort of Masonic lodge.
The Prime Minister's spoken today about the danger of a witch hunt. And you've got to say that a lot of these allegations relate to many decades ago. You're relying on people's memories. How much of a concern do you think that is?
I don't think it'll ever turn into a witch hunt. I hope it doesn't, but we are getting people coming forward, really upset people.
So you think it's the scale of allegations about the past that is emerging now? It's not a witch hunt, but it's just the scale of people who've been affected by this that you're interested in?
Yeah, it is. It's genuine, honest people coming forward with a story to tell, which they were never allowed to do last time.
Bill Brereton, you think there's a danger of witch hunt?
Well, I think any society should be judged how it deals with vulnerable people. And as I understand it, the Prime Minister said something about gays. This isn't about gays, it's about paedophilia, which is, it's a completely different issue. Two consenting adults, fine. But, this is not that. And I think, it's the test of society is how we deal with people who are vulnerable. And these were vulnerable people, and they weren't treated properly, and they should be.
Bill Brereton, Keith Gregory, thank you very much for joining me.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. So, Marty, I'll go to you first. Do you guys know anything about this case and if there's any updates? And then I know you have an audio clip you wanted to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to get into that first if we can, because I think it really ties into this whole government scandal.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, a clip from 2012 from MP Tom Watson. He was speaking in Parliament, and what he has to say is quite revealing.
Tom Watson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The evidence file used to convict paedophile Peter Wrighton, if it still exists, contains clear intelligence of a widespread paedophile ring. One of its members boasts of his links to a senior aide of a former Prime Minister, who says he could smuggle indecent images of children from abroad. The leads were not followed up, but if the files still exist, I want to ensure that the Metropolitan Police secure the evidence, re-examine it, and investigate clear intelligence suggesting a powerful paedophile network linked to Parliament and Number 10.
Well, the honourable gentleman raises a very difficult and complex case, and I'm not entirely sure which former Prime Minister he's referring to, but what I would like to do is look very carefully in Hansard as to the allegations that he's made, the case that he's raised, and look very carefully and see what the government can do to help give him the assurances that he seeks.
Yeah, and that case was never really raised because what they're referring to is Operation OR, which actually found politicians, police and judges were on a list, confirmed as well, and they were downloading child porn. So a big red flag there that is still not been investigated from 2012.
That's okay. Just Google 4,500 Pentagon employees caught with child porn. And what did the government do? That's right. Not a thing.
Whitewashed.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. That's all I'll say. But I have another piece of audio I want to play. And then, like I said, final segment we can get into. I want to get your thoughts on this, and I want to cover how Penn State and Sandusky and all that stuff connects to this, as well as Boys Town, which Joe and I have done shows about. I've done shows about myself. Just go into federaljack.com, and you can check it out yourself in the search bar, or if you want to go to the shows, go to popeyeradio.com, popeyeradio.com, and it brings up the downloadable archive page, and you can listen to my shows about this in the past. Anyway, I have an audio clip for you. This is I did a video about 6-8 months ago, probably longer than that now, probably about 8 months ago, 9 months ago, when Bryan Singer, he's the guy that did X-Men, the movies, a former child star came out and accused him of abusing him. And at the time when this came out, I was talking about it, and I had played the audio, and just to show how it's connected to things like Woody Allen and everything else, and these Hollywood pedophiles. And then I also played the audio of what Corey Feldman said about how pedophilia in Hollywood is this huge open secret that nobody talks about. So it's about 13 minutes. I want you guys to take a listen to this audio clip. It's the audio from the video. Just listen, because you'll hear the guy who accused Bryan Singer. And again, where did that go? Did it get whitewashed? Did it get covered up? How come that's not in the media anymore? Oh, because it's not the newest thing. Now it's, Miley Cyrus, what color of underwear is she wearing? Or what happened at the Grammys this week? Or what did Beyonce do or say? Or what did that moron Kanye West do this time again? Because look over here, don't look over there. Okay? Just remember, pedophilia is the biggest open secret in Hollywood. They want you to pay attention to stupid things. They want you to worry about stupid things like what fashion someone's wearing. Don't worry about the little kids that are getting rampantly abused. Anyway, here we go. Often you've heard me talk about on the broadcast the dark, evil things that are done by the powers that shouldn't be behind the scenes. You've heard me bring up the rampant pedophilia, the Satanism, and all the other weird, disgusting things that these perverts are into. Well, in the case of the pedophilia, I've talked about how Hollywood insiders are a part of this, that it's not just the elites in positions of power in politics, but positions of power all over the place. And you've heard me play audio and stuff before of different stars like Corey Feldman talking about it. But here now, April of 2014, we have a man accusing a Hollywood director and others in Hollywood of being pedophiles. And he says in his press conference, his lawyer and him both said it's a rampant problem, the pedophilia in Hollywood, and it's just out of control. Now, where have I heard that type of talk before? Oh, that's right, from Corey Feldman. Where else have I heard about pedophilia in Hollywood? Recently. Oh, that's right. Back in February of this year, Dylan Farrow wrote an open letter about her experiences. And in it, when I posted the open letter that she had written, I posted a link up here at the top with an editor's note, and I put, this serves as another example of the rampant pedophilia in Hollywood and the fact that people just ignore it like it's not there. Hollywood's biggest secret that everyone knows but won't talk about. Let's not forget what child actor Corey Feldman had to say about Hollywood's pedophilia problem. And then I put a link to the video, and just to prove that it's a real problem, I actually posted it in full at the bottom down here. Let's listen for one quick second what Corey Feldman had to say. Now remember, you have another child actor who's in his 30s right now coming forward and saying he was raped by not only the director of X-Men, but other people, other Hollywood moguls. Keep that in mind, and let's listen to what Corey Feldman had to say. And I'm going to let the video pick up from the beginning. It's about 3 minutes, but I want to let it pick up from the beginning just in case people aren't familiar with Corey Feldman. They'll get a good idea of who he is, and then you get to hear what he has to say. Let's listen.
Corey Feldman has no idea what it's like not to be famous. He was just 3 years old in this McDonald's commercial.
McDonald's gift certificates. I literally was famous before I knew my own name.
His roles defined the 80s. Goonies.
This was my dream, my wish.
Stand By Me.
You call my dad a loony again, and I'll kill you.
License to Drive.
The only difference between you and that greaseball is that he has a license and you don't.
Films that propelled him into the spotlight for his entire youth. But being famous so young, he says, caused serious damage to him and his friends.
Do you feel like you missed out on a normal childhood?
What childhood? I don't know what that means.
A lost childhood and a loss of innocence. He blames the adults, not just those looking to profit from charming children, but also some with far more sinister motives.
I can tell you that the number one problem in Hollywood was and is and always will be pedophilia. That's the biggest problem for children in this industry.
The casting couch even applies to children.
Oh, yeah. Not in the same way. It's all done under the radar.
Nobody talks about pedophilia.
It's the big secret.
And it's widespread?
Oh, yeah. I was surrounded by them when I was 14 years old. Surrounded. Literally. Didn't even know it. It wasn't until I was old enough to realize what they were and what they wanted and what they were about and the types of people that were surrounding me till I went, oh my God, they were everywhere like vultures.
Vultures who Feldman says abused him and his best friend, the late child actor Corey Haim, his co-star in The Lost Boys.
Well, what happens if my mom is dating the head vampire?
Feldman says the trauma of that pedophilia contributed to Haim's death.
There's one person to blame in the death of Corey Haim, and that person happens to be a Hollywood mogul. And that person needs to be exposed, but unfortunately I can't be the one to do it. But the person that knows who did it and knows who he is watching right now, I guarantee you. Yeah.
Intriguing.
Yeah. There was a circle of older men that surrounded themselves around this group of kids. And they all had either their own power or connections to great power in the entertainment industry.
Feldman won't name names. And he admits his friend had a struggle with addiction, which he says was a mechanism to cope with his demons.
It was a symptom.
It was a symptom, correct.
Are we in it?
In 2008, the two Coreys confronted each other on their reality show about the dark past they shared.
You let me get around in my life, man, raped, so to speak, when I was about 14 and a half, and I'm saying this right now. What'd you do, man, when you saw that going down when I was 14 to me? What'd you do? You knew about it.
You want to talk about the truth? Okay, well, then let's talk about the truth. I was being molested at the same time by somebody else. What'd you do? You know, there's a lot of good people in this industry, but there's also a lot of really, really sick, corrupt people in this industry. And there are people in this industry who have gotten away with it for so long that they feel they're above the law. And that's got to change. That's got to stop.
We contacted Corey Haim's mother. In an email, she said, "I'm not willing to discuss or respond to anything Corey Feldman has to say. I wish he would talk about himself only and leave my son out of it."
Is there a dark side to child stardom?
Definitely. I think a lot of kids don't really want to do it.
And it goes on into the parents and everything else from there. But You just heard him say that pedophilia. This is a former child star, not one of these reporters looking into it, not a stupid talking head that's on CNN, not some bogus investigator sent out, which if the pedophilia ring is that big that it has people that high up in power, don't you think there's connections to the government? Because there's obviously government pedophiles that are in a big connected ring. I wonder if that ring is the same ring. No. It must be all these different pedophile rings all over the place, right? Wrong. Okay? Wrong. Look up Jimmy Savile and the BBC. Look what was going on over there. Okay? Absolutely disgusting. Anyway, Michael Egan is the guy that's accusing Bryan Singer. Here, I'll play you a little bit of audio really quick because they asked him, like, why are you coming forward now? And he said that when he was younger, they went to the FBI and they went to they went to investigators and they said that there was, no evidence. Where have we seen pedophilia covered up before by investigators? Oh, that's right. Only every time when it's connected to these huge rings.
Made you come forward now. Maybe we'll start with that.
Sure. I turned it in when I was a kid. My mom turned it in to the authorities. We were living here in Los Angeles. Turned it in, and what happened was basically it fell on deaf ears. I mean, we didn't get anywhere. And then I basically buried it in me as deep as I possibly could. I developed a problem with drinking and to numb that pain for years. And then about 2 years ago, I decided to completely stop the drinking. And 11 months ago, I walked into my first trauma therapy. I've been undergoing trauma therapy for the last, I think, 11 months. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Nebraska, had the aspirations of becoming an actor. Then was advised to move to Los Angeles. Moved to Los Angeles and continued to pursue my dream of being an actor. And went to a private school here in Los Angeles. At the time was called San Fernando Valley Professional School. Very small school. I believe there were 4 children in my grade. One of them was Chad Shackley's younger brother, and became close friends with him. Had me over to the house of where these perpetrators in this ring kind of basically started. They pull me away for their threat sessions and tell me they have gaydar, they have this. At the end of the day, if you don't keep the members of this group happy, we control Hollywood, we can eliminate you, we will eliminate you. Threat after threat after threat. At the house, I've had drugs put in drinks. I had liquor poured down my throat from being where there were rules in the house of no swimsuits, no clothes out by the pool area. I was raped numerous times in that house by numerous individuals, various types of sexual abuse, all throughout that house. It was just something, you were like a piece of meat to these people, and they'd pass you around between them. It was, if I could define what that house was, it's evil.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If he could define what that house was and what he went through, it would be evil. Evil, ladies and gentlemen. So, here you have another former child star coming out and telling you just heard Corey Feldman first, and then you heard from the accuser himself. Sounds similar, huh? Oh, I'm sure they're all just making it up for money, Popeye. These guys are loser actors and they need money now. Right. Sure. Even though their stories match up with all these other abuse victim stories.
Yeah, that seems to be the big thing there.
You can go over to Daily Mail, too. They have more video. It's a little bit longer, a little bit more in depth. You hear him, it's up here. You hear him talking about what happened a little bit more in depth. But it's the same thing. They drugged him. This is one of the pedophiles. This guy's actually convicted of pedophilia now. This is the actor when he was young. Look, young, yep, just like they like him. Disgusting. Ugh. Absolutely gross. I don't think that it's fake, right? I think it's real. And if this guy went through what he says he did, I feel bad for him. This is horrible. Absolutely horrible. But again, not surprising. You've been told by other child actors, other former childhood stars about what they went through. So this isn't a joke, ladies and gentlemen. This stuff goes on. And there are a lot more people that aren't famous that this happens to that don't have a voice and that nobody will pay attention to if they come out. I mean, this kid was, you heard him say they went to investigators and it went nowhere. Go look up what happens when these pedophile rings get investigated. Nothing happens. It falls by the wayside because the police are involved too. There's high-ranking police officials and political officials involved in these pedophile rings, ladies and gentlemen. You have to understand this in order to understand what's going on. So pay attention, read, and even though it's disgusting to talk about and think about, this stuff is real. We have to expose these scumbags so that they can be held accountable for the evil that they have perpetrated upon people. All right, we are out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, check me out on Twitter at DTRH_Popeye, at DTRH_Popeye, or at, hey, I had to let that stay in there. I rarely
We're
ever.
out of time, are we?
Well, I rarely, actually, we are. We have about 2 minutes, and then the break is coming up. Isn't it interesting how that lines up? Anyway, I want to throw to Marty real quick because we got a little bit less than 2 minutes. Marty, thoughts about what you just heard?
Yeah, just going to say my bad for cutting in there. I thought that was the real Popeye, not the crisis Popeye that was talking. Yeah, I was just going to say that's how everybody's seeing it now. You know, when people are coming out talking about these people who are in the spotlight, famous people have abused them, this, that, and the other. The general public are going, nah, you're just doing it for money, to make a name for yourself. And that's where I really see the problem in all of this, that people are so brainwashed, they don't believe it. You know, they think that just because somebody's a somebody, oh, they wouldn't do that, they're a nice person. Well, you know, these guys are not nice people at all.
No, they're evil. I mean, this is disgusting. Like, if you hurt children in any way, shape, or form, and we get back on in the final segment, we can, I'm done with the audio. I laid it all out there, and there's actually way more, but even 3 hours isn't enough. Just go to federaljack.com/mind control and download the audio and the video and stuff and watch it for yourself. When we get back, I want to let you guys, put your thoughts out there, other things you might know. Throw some other information. I know this is hard to talk about. I know it's disgusting. But this is the truth, people. I know you don't want to face this. I know this is really gross. If you have children, especially, people are like, well, you know, Popeye, this is hard. I have kids. Okay. Would you want someone doing this to your child? Because I know if someone tried, even thought about doing this to my child, I would kill them. And then I'd bring them back to life so I could kill them again. Okay? I'd make them suffer. This kind of garbage needs to be exposed. Stay tuned. We will be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment. And wow, 3 hours went by fast tonight.
This was lightning fast.
Dude, if you haven't tuned in, if you didn't hear the whole thing, I'm going to put the 3 hours up in its entirety on YouTube. I'm sure Kev will. Go listen to it. And again, I can't urge you enough to go to federaljack.com. It's not like a news website. I used to have it set up like that. I mean, there is news articles, and I still post articles from some original contributors and stuff. But part of the big focus I did with the site is as an archive of info. And there's a huge download section. There's a reality of war. There's a 9/11, a JFK, all my radio show archives. But what we're talking about tonight is all listed under Mind Control, and it's there. You can either go to federaljack.com and then go to the download section there, and you'll see the Mind Control thing, or the URL is federaljack.com/mind control. Go there, download everything. In fact, would somebody please go there and drop the link in the chat? I still can't get to my site. That's why I haven't updated it in like a week, because I haven't been able to get there. I've reset my router. I've called my ISP. It does not matter. For whatever reason, I can't get there, and I know the site is up and running. I just can't get to it. So if somebody would be kind enough to go and put the URL into their browser and then copy it and drop it into the chat, that would be awesome. And also, if somebody could go just to the download section page itself on Federal Jack and drop that link, because that page has different widgets, which if you click each one, it's a button. It brings you to the corresponding download page. Rip all that stuff. Look, I don't know how long the internet's going to be around, right? Neither do you. The whole point of that being up there is so you can download it onto your hard drives and then do the research yourself. This isn't about me telling you. This isn't about Kev telling you. This isn't about Marty or Joe telling you. This is about you listening to our conversation, being inspired by it to go do the research yourself, and then go educate others to the scumbaggery that's going on. And then we can hold these pieces of crap accountable, because that's what needs to happen. Anyway, guys, I want to get your thoughts on all this. First, I'll go to Kev because I know he's seething. He wants to take the pitchfork and go start hitting people. What say you on the audio clips that I played? What do you think about the rampant pedophilia in Hollywood, Kev?
Nothing surprises me. This is a topic I've looked into for so long, Popeye. And I really still scratch my head at the fact that when people watch material like this, they choose to comment on maybe the likes of us presenting it. They don't bother to get angered over the actual material that has been presented. And before I not launch into anything, but I want to give a big shout out to anyone in the UK that's still listening right now. 1:30 in the morning. It's been some really, really dark stuff we've covered tonight. So a big shout out to all of you first of all. Now, Popeye, you brought up the clip with the Masons. Now, I don't like to single out any one group when it comes to paedophilia because it covers all creeds, colours and races. There is no boundaries. It's not consigned to, say, one religion or one colour. It knows no boundaries. It goes everywhere. And we had a case recently in Rotherham in the UK, and the media were very keen, funnily enough, to point out that this was a Asian and Muslim paedophile ring. Now, it went far further than this, but again, they were trying to get people to concentrate more on the division aspect of it, the Muslims. But back to this Wales case and the Freemasons and everything else. Well, this case in Wales, this was concerned about a children's home, and it spanned between 1974 and 1990. Now, there was allegations of 140 abuses to children, and it spanned over 18 children's homes. Now, at the end up of all of this Operation Balial, which they called it, out of these 140 allegations, at an expense of £13 million to us, the taxpayer, one guy got convicted. And he only got convicted of 33 counts of sexual abuse against 19 boys and one girl. Now, this guy was raking in £200,000 a year. Now, back then, that was an absolutely astronomical amount of money. And he was subsidising that salary by delivering children to Dolphin Square. Now, this is where all the politicians and people like that would live, Popeye. And we've also, Marty played a clip, Tom Watson. Now, there's not just one decent politician in there. I've managed to find another one. And this is a Labour MP called Simon Dunchuk. I'm sorry if I've butchered his last name there. But I want you to listen to this just brief clip of him talking on the radio about some of the stuff he's been looking into.
Now, the Labour MP for Rochdale, Simon Danchuk, recently published a book, Smile for the Camera, The Double Life of Cyril Smith. It detailed his investigation into allegations of child abuse surrounding his Liberal predecessor. Now he's been contacted by those involved in other investigations. And today he spoke to our reporter Becky Milligan about those investigations and the effect they've had on him.
It's harrowing listening to some of the stories, but I make this point, it's never as harrowing as what the victims have been through. We have regular conversations with people who've ended up on drugs. It's really ruined their lives. We hear about people who've committed suicide, and so when people say, oh, these victims are just coming forward to try and get some compensation, let me tell you, all the money in the world wouldn't sorry.
That's all right, Simon. I know it's really harrowing. Are you okay?
And that's Simon Danchuk, Labour MP, and it's just come out in the past few days that his partner, his wife, she was actually the victim of sexual abuse as well. Now, another place that comes up when you cover these topics, guys, is a place called Elm Guesthouse. Now, this was basically where the rich and famous were going to abuse said children that would be delivered from these care homes and picked up around Piccadilly Square and places where the homeless would hang out. Now, people that would visit there include the likes of Jimmy Savile, obviously, Cyril Smith, Cliff Richard, all these big names that we're now starting to see coming out in the media. But do you know what? Despite all of this starting to come out and the lid coming off it, Tom Watson, Simon Danchuk, this big investigation that is allegedly going on just now into all these cases, who's willing to bet with me that, again, just like the North Wales case, after millions of pounds is spent and the cover-up is complete, we'll probably be served up one, maybe two, dead people. What do you think, Popeye? At best, that is what we'll get.
Yeah, I wonder how many people are going to die in mysterious car accidents. Or plane crashes. All I got to say is if you're involved in anything like this, don't go in a plane or a car. And if you have to travel, it should be in something armored like a tank. Actually, if you're involved in the pedophilia, you deserve to be kicked off the planet. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if all of a sudden, like, investigators that were involved in this started getting in accidents.
Ooh,
This is stuff that'll get you killed.
Like Jill Dando, Kev?
Oh, well, we go there. Okay, let's go to Jill Dando then. Now, she was part of a successful BBC programme called Crime Watch. Her co-host was Nick Ross. On a side note, Nick Ross was asked just not so long ago something to do with child pornography and this paedophile kind of scandal. Wasn't at all bothered by it. Thought there was a bit of a witch hunt going on. Couldn't see why there was all this fuss. But Jill Dando, we were told, was taken out on her doorstep at point-blank range by a guy called Barry George. Now, Barry George made the perfect fall guy. He had learning difficulties, and I can't remember how long he actually spent in jail for the assassination of Jill Dando, but he was subsequently released. And to this day, he has never been given a penny of compensation for the time that he spent in there. Now, what they reckon did happen was Jill Dando had found out about this elite paedophile ring that existed not only at the BBC, but how we've already shown how it led to Buckingham Palace. Now, this kind of information has enough power to bring down the establishment if it was to get out. So what people think did happen was there was a Serbian hitman pulled into all of this, and he actually silenced Jill Dando. Now, her husband, I believe, went on to actually work for who? Well, he was a doctor and he went to work for the royal family at Buckingham Palace.
Ooh, nice.
So, was she silenced? Was it just Barry George, as they first said? I know what I'm hedging my bets on.
Yeah, it's like Gary Webb as well, wasn't he involved with the Franklin cover-up, amongst other drug scandals and stuff, and they just shoot themselves in the head twice. Yeah.
You know, while we're naming...
While we're naming people that were killed, why don't you look up Nancy Schaefer? Nancy space Schaefer. She was exposing CPS and their connection to child sex trafficking.
Yeah.
And then suddenly her husband killed her and himself in a quote-unquote murder-suicide, which I don't believe for 1 minute. I think she was killed and he was killed, and they by a hit team, and it was set up to look like a murder-suicide.
Over at Freedom...
She was exposing stuff like a week before, dude, and all of a sudden she's killed. Really?
Oh, it's unbelievable, man. Over at freedomoutpost.com back in May, Dean Garrison compiled like a bunch of letters from almost not so much confessions, but basically just kind of detailing what some of these people went through in CPS. And it's the article's titled Child Protective Services Stealing and Sex Trafficking Children Stories Could Get You Killed. And It does for a lot of people. You know, they're threatened. You heard it on all these clips tonight. All of these people are threatened. Well, what did Savile say to that one guy, you know, about that? Don't say anything, you know? No, you don't want to do that. It would be bad.
Well, I've got another clip that's not Savile, but it ties in with that, Joe. Now, this was another character, a household name in the UK and globally, Gary Glitter, Paul Gadd. Now, he has spent umpteen occasions in jail now for paedophilia, and in fact, he is facing the rest of his life in prison, and deservedly so. But again, just like with Savile, there was a TV show called This Is Your Life, and this was back in the day, as they say. And Gary Glitter was on there. Now, I'll play this clip, and then I'll need to explain the end of it. It's only a short clip, but just listen in to this.
Well, Gary, your fans cut across all age groups and include Patricia Neal and the late Roald Dahl. You were introduced to them by their daughter, and she is here. Tessa Dahl. Tessa, my God. Tessa, were you impressed from the very beginning?
Oh, always greatly impressed. Gary actually came to live in my house when he was between jobs. And,
that's really great.
My sister Lucy turned it into quite a successful venture because she used to pack the train full of her adolescent school friends in school uniform and they'd Skype school, and she'd bring them up to the house and charge them £5 a head to come and gaze at glitter. And my sister Lucy turned it into quite a successful venture because she used to pack the train full of her adolescent school friends in school uniform and they'd Skype school, and she'd bring them up to the house and charge them £5 a head to come and gaze at glitter. Skype school, and she'd Skype school.
Okay, now, towards the end of that clip there, you heard it repeating. Obviously, you can't see what happened in the moving images. Well, let me just explain. Gary Glitter, at the point where this lady was explaining how she used to have her sister pack a train full of young girls in school uniforms and have them pay £5 to get glittered, as she called it, Gary Glitter raises his one finger to his lips, tells her to be quiet and kind of winks and moves on. Hidden in plain sight, there for everyone to see, telling her to shut up. But nobody caught on at that point. It's easy now with hindsight to see what's going on, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And Savile actually came out once saying that Gary Glitter did nothing. He was innocent.
And I also seen a clip with Jimmy Savile, and towards the end of his life, where he was asked about his time on Jim Will Fix It and stuff like that. And he was asked what he thought of kids, and he says, babies, they should all be murdered. I hate them. And you know, it was probably the most truthful thing that ever left his mouth. But a lot of people will wonder, well, how did he so successfully target these children? And I put a lot of that down to one of his friends, a fellow person recognised by the British Empire, Dame Esther Ranson. Now, Esther Ranson worked for the BBC and set up something called Childline. Now, at the time, I was growing up, and I remember it being programmed into us. If you had anyone abusing you at home or anything like that, you could phone up. It was like the Samaritans. You'd be safe there. You could tell your story anonymously. Nobody would come. You wouldn't get into trouble from whoever was abusing you. But just think about this, folks. With all these vulnerable, the most vulnerable of children, phoning up to people that they thought were going to protect them, could it be that they were actually offering themselves up to the most evil people in this nation? Once targeted and once seen that they were in a family, could it not be, like I said before, could they not be blackmailed? Could that not be used? And then they take the child off them, and where do they end up? Well, they end up in said child care home where they're supposed to be protected in places like North Wales. And we've already explained what happens after that. Over 100 claims, and one guy went to jail for 33 of them. absolutely disgusting.
It is, and it really makes me think, about the social services and how they're targeted to have up to 1,000 children per month adopted. Now, of course, with adoptions comes snatching, and they're going to some awful tactics right now, taking people's children away and probably feeding them to these very scumbags that we've been talking about. Because I know a lot of these cases have been previous decades, but you can be sure that it's still going on today.
And just an interesting note that it popped into my mind. I mentioned Nick Ross and the Crime Watch programme. Turns out, Esther Ranson, you couldn't make this up. Her cousin was the wife or the ex-wife of Nick Ross. They're all connected, folks. These same characters, these same players, they are all part of this one giant ring that still exists to this day.
But I'm sure it's all coincidence.
Of course, and we're just all nutcases. And remember, we're talking like this, Popeye. We are deemed as dangerous as ISIS.
Almost like right-wing extremists in the United States, buddy.
Whatever. David Cameron can kiss my ass.
Non-violent extremists.
The walking, talking sausage.
Your prime minister can
Is that
kiss
what
my
you guys
rosy
call
red
him?
ass.
That's what I call him. And when you look at him, you've got Nick Clegg and you've got David Miliband. I just call them David Cleggy Band because they're like three cheeks of one mutated asshole that swam out of Fukushima.
Absolutely.
What's Fukushima?
Wow.
Oh, did I mention that other thing we're not meant to talk about?
Yeah, what's Fukushima? What is that?
Yep. People have forgotten that, Popeye.
Fuka what? Never mind that big thing that's spewing radioactivity into the planet. Don't worry about that. What's the Pacific Ocean? Anyway, yeah, so the pedophiles, we have about...
KBS just hijacked your show, man.
No, we have about 7 minutes left. What do you guys think about the prince? I mean, is anybody over in the UK pissed off that another member of your supposed royal family?
Well, has the shock value been worn off or something? I guess that's more to the point.
Nobody cares. Like, oh, you raped kids? It's all good.
No, hang on. I think Marty should actually reiterate that kind of act and that kind of immunity they've got from any prosecution. Because I think there's so many people in the UK and beyond, Martin, that don't understand there is no way we can actually bring him to justice.
No, there really isn't. There's a two-tier system when it comes to members of the monarchy. And again, that goes back to what Christopher Everard brought up, the divine right to rule. Just Google it, check it out. Absolutely shocking.
Let's get something straight. There's no such thing as the Kobayashi Maru. There is no such thing as an impossible situation. So he can be brought to justice. I'm just saying.
But
I'll leave it at
this
that.
scandal that involved Prince Andrew, and Joe, your take on this as well. I mean, this embroils people like Bill Clinton, one of your former presidents.
Surprise.
He was up on the plane, and I'm betting that just similar to Ted Heath's boat, the Morning Cloud, when these young boys went on trips on the planes with Sandusky and Clintons and Epsteins, who's to bet they didn't actually land again?
Come on, man. You know that they had the Lollipop Guild as the frickin' waiting staff there to blow them whenever they saw fit. I mean, you know that.
They're all connected. Sandusky, okay? That whole Penn State thing. It's connect. Why do you think it was all pushed on Sandusky, right? Notice the other one, the old, I can't remember his name right now. The old coach, what's his name? Paterno, right? He died suddenly. Well, suddenly he's got lung cancer. And I was like, wow, if that guy's dead in a month, they offed him. It was like 31 days later. Oh, Joe Paterno died. It's such a shame. Cancer got him. What? Wasn't he just fine like a month and a half, 2 months before? Suddenly he's got lung cancer and dead? I mean, I know it happens sometimes, but really? Coincidentally? And it was around the same time that they were like, is Paterno going to go and testify in court? What does Joe know? What secrets does Joe know? And I'm like, he's not going to make it to court. And he didn't. Never made it to court, right? So Sandusky, he gets sent up the river. But just like Jimmy Savile, in the first day that story broke, and I talked about this on air. I did multiple shows about this. They're in the archives. But on that first day, there was an article that came out, and I've been trying to find it. I have to see if I was able to, if I remember. I don't know if I remember.
Wayback Machine.
Yeah, but I don't know if I saved the page. I might have saved it. I have to see if I can find it. But people need to look on the Wayback Machine. But there was, and that's why I talk about this stuff on air, because the listeners, remember, we do so much. Listeners are very helpful in doing stuff like this. There was an article about how Sandusky was the procurer of children. So not only was he a pedophile, but he was like Savile. He was a procurer of them, right? But it went away, and the focus became he was a pedophile. But the original story came out that he had helped get children for other high-level pedophiles, very powerful, rich, elite pedophiles. And then all of a sudden, poof, that went away, and it was, he's a dirty pedophile, which, don't get me wrong, he was and is a dirty pedophile, and into the wood chipper he needs to go. But he was, like Savile, a procurer of children. And to me, I see that. I see him. I see Savile. They're all being like, Savile's dead. Sandusky, I mean, they probably told him, after he got arrested, take the fall and shut your mouth, or, look what happened to Joe Paterno. You want your kids and your wife to die? So he gets sent to some cushy federal prison or whatnot, and he has to spend the rest of his life there. But I'm sure he's not. I'm sure he's not in Sing Sing. You know what I'm saying? In solitary confinement. I'm sure he's being taken care of to a certain extent, so he doesn't run his mouth and he does his time, right? But the point is, they're throwing these people that are. I mean, he was already retired. He was out of his game. You know what I'm saying? He was already done. He was already, he ran, and by the way, he ran a children's charity. Another example of how these people, just like you heard Savile, he had all these charities, same thing. Okay? Same thing. Sandusky had charities, and there's kids that were, molested and, disgusting. These people need to be swinging from trees. But again, they're not where it ends. Unless, of course, you're in the mainstream media, then that's all there is. Just Sandusky or Savile. They don't go any deeper. Ladies and gentlemen, it goes much deeper. It goes all the way up to the royal family. It goes to the White House. It goes to, what do they call it, number 10? Or whatever the frig it is over there in the UK.
Yeah, it's number 10, man. And Popeye, I have to jump in just before we go, because we spoke during the break about the listeners out there, and they have stuck with us on this topic tonight. So a big, huge shout out to each and every one of them. It restores my faith a little bit, Popeye, because sometimes I just see us lot standing up for these kids, but there's a whole lot more of us when you look around.
Well, everybody needs to be talking about this. I know it's disgusting. I know people don't like to talk about it because it makes them feel real uncomfortable, but do you discuss, if you have cancer, if you have a tumor, do you discuss it? Yeah, I don't want to talk about it because it's eventually going to kill you, right? Well, same thing with this kind of evil. So it's time to excise the tumor and get rid of it. And
talking of tumours, the guys on the rundown are in the chat room. They're going to be coming up live right after the break.
Hey, Mike and Kriston, the rundown.
They'll love me for that, eh?
Nice promo, Kev. Guys, we got about a minute. Thank you so much for coming on and hanging out and discussing this with me and going over this. And I was talking to you the other day, Kev. I said we need to talk about what you know and what I know and what Marty knows, and we need to get together.
Thanks a lot. You and Joe, Marty as well. It's great coming together, the two shows like this, because this needs probably the 16 hours that you and Melissa and Aaron went on a truth-a-thon one time, and it's still good enough, Popeye.
You're right. We couldn't talk about it enough, Marty.
Just going to say it's been a pleasure, and thanks again for having me on. Thanks to listeners.
Oh, I appreciate it. Joe?
Yes? Oh,
thank you.
Yes. No, it was a great show, man. It was good that we all got together and tackled such a very difficult topic like this.
I agree. Ladies and gentlemen, do your research. It's real. Put your big boy pants on, your big girl pants on. Understand that this stuff happens. Deal with it. Suck it up. Let's get rid of the tumor. Let's excise it.
Silence. It's consent.
You got that right. With that, we are out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, as I always tell you, the solutions to our problems are an inside job. Go be the superheroes I know you are.